All right. Morning, everyone. Call this meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Mike Solari.
Here.
Doug Hildreth.
Here.
Kristen Sanders.
Here.
Ben Baumheim.
Here.
Session Machine. Here.
All right. Our quorum. Wonderful. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. All right. All right. Moving on. Public comments. Anyone have anything that is not on the agenda for today they'd like to comment on? And if I may remind you, please try your best to adhere to the 3-minute rule, please. Anyone? Harlan.
Good morning.
Morning.
Marlon Reed. Good to see you all. And I just want to talk about the Shelter Cove Property Owners Association is doing their fundraiser or their membership drive next month. We'll be doing an event at Jippo for a pint beer. Donation goes to a nonprofit. And this is the membership is the only money we make. We don't do anything else. So you just join us to do things. A new thing we're doing this year is going to be fixing potholes too. So if you remember, you can get a pothole fixed for that. And we also do 4 trash cleanup days. And just we try to help out the community. Anybody that has any issues, we try to stand up for them. So please join us. April, and we will be sending out a newsletter. Very informative, and I hope you guys all enjoy it. Thanks.
Thanks, Harlan.
Harlan, what day was that?
The Jippo?
Yes.
I don't know.
So sometime next week at Jippo, we could go to the drive.
Yeah.
Okay.
Definitely in April. I think it's the 3rd.
Oh, April. Next week. Okay, cool.
Is it on the board? Jeff, is it on the message board? It will be on the message board.
I can say for sure it is not. Anybody else? Public comment? Anything that's not on the agenda? No? Now we're going to move on to the consent calendar. Consent calendar has changed a little bit. The consent calendar for board members, if there's something that you'd like to discuss on the consent calendar, we pull the item from the consent calendar and make it an item of discussion under items pulled from the consent calendar. So basically, all we are here to do is approve the minutes for February 20th and approve the bills for February 2025. But if anyone has any questions regarding this, let me know now so I can pull it and we'll discuss it afterwards. So first, we have to approve the minutes and approve the bills for February. Anyone have any concerns or questions that they want to discuss about the minutes for February or the bills? No? It's getting easier and easier. All right. Well, can I get a motion to approve these things?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent calendar.
Roll call.
Mike Solari.
Aye.
Doug Hildreth.
Aye.
Kristen Sanders.
Aye.
Ben Baumheim.
Aye.
Session Machine.
Very nice. So items pulled from consent calendar? No. Motion carries. Oh, sorry about that. I have that written down over here. Correspondence discussion items. We are moving along nicely. Humboldt County correspondence, and I understand that Lieutenant McCall's on the online.
No, actually, Lieutenant McCall is not online. But, so we don't have a report from the Humboldt County Sheriff's Office, but I can report that the Humboldt County Roads is out in the field. Left side mowing, so just be aware of that, and we don't get much notice of where they're going to be working, but they are out there working.
Good.
Drive safe. That's all we have for.
That's all we have for the county?
County correspondence.
All right, let's move over to district grants.
Yes, state of district grants. So at last month's meeting, the board requested a discussion item be brought back on the state of district grants. Attached to the packet here are two representations of that subject. The first depicts only active projects, and the second includes recently concluded and unfunded projects. So I'm not going to go over everything, but if you have any specific questions, try to answer.
I do not. Anybody else? Any questions about the grants?
Tisha, you want to go?
No, I've already had my questions.
I've got some questions. So the items that are listed here in the matching kind, have those all already been budgeted for? Are those already included in the budget that we passed earlier this year?
I say yes, but I'm not sure about, for instance, the Measure Z funds. That one. I'm not sure exactly on the USDA one too, so.
I can speak to the Measure Z funds. That project's been completed and paid for, and there is no matching on the USDA.
Okay.
Okay.
And that's the, so there's no, I'm sorry, so where it says the 197,000 for the item number 5 there in the USDA, that's for the matching kind, that's incorrect? It's just on the Resort Improvement District grant list in 2024, just the first.
Yeah, that's incorrect.
Okay.
That one. I believe it was in the application under other projects that were funded.
Okay.
In my mind. Yeah, we got a waiver for no match from USDA on that grant.
Okay, that's good to hear. And then I had a couple of questions with the, I guess just one, I was able to get the other one answered. In terms of the Measure Z grant, it looks like there was, for the grant amount was the 75,000, the matching kind was 125,000. And we received the full 75,000 to date, and then the expenses incurred are about 25,000 extra. That was that 20% overrun that you discussed?
Oh, yeah, on the building in the back.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, a lot of our Measure Z projects are direct funds, they're not grants.
Okay.
And so the grant goes from the county to the Humboldt County Fire Chiefs Association, and they distribute the like equipment, PPE, stuff like that. And that's not captured on this as actual funds received.
Okay, so
The building was direct cash.
okay, so that 125, that wasn't a match that was required by the grant. That was the amount that we just had to pay out in order to complete the
Correct,
project.
as a general fund from fire tax.
Okay, and so that's actually about.
Yeah, probably. When we're all said and done, it's probably gonna be closer to $275,000 project.
Okay.
Once we're done our aprons and everything, but just to get the building up as it sits now, it's very close.
Okay, thank you. And then I was looking at the item number 6, the FEMA DR 4434 item. It has no expenses incurred to date, but it says that it needs to be closed out. And so I was wondering if what needs to be done still to close that out, and what the expenses incurred to date are if we've completed the project.
I'll speak to that one. This is a project that I just found out was not closed out. It was done before I was here. It
Okay.
wasn't in the spreadsheet, so I'm working on determining the expenses currently, and I don't have that figured out yet.
Okay, what remains still for it to be closed out? Is there still work that needs to be done, money that we're gonna need to put out?
Completed. It's just going back and going through all the time cards and figuring out how many hours exactly are you staff spent on the project.
Okay. And so in terms of contractors or other organizations that are looking into RID for any kind of payment or anything, we don't have to worry about any of that at this point. That's all been covered.
I'm not, as far as I know, we paid out
I mean, it was a project that we did with the Humboldt County Public Works Department. And
Okay.
they contributed a portion of their time, and I don't know if they gave the materials, I'm sorry, I wasn't here when the project happened, but,
It's okay.
it's hard to go back and look and try to figure out what happened, especially because the staff that worked on it are doing more on it. So
Right.
it's kind of a hard project to go back and research and figure out, but, it wasn't tracked that well, I can tell you that much, so it's extra hard to go back and look. And I think part of the problem with that was because they prepaid out that, to us, which is unusual. Usually you have to get reimbursed afterwards. So they were given to us upfront, I believe, and it's sat there for a while.
Yeah, because it looks like they're very specific amounts, so it looks like that was for like very specific. It wasn't just like, here's a $75,000 payment. It's so that's, I assume that it had been reimbursed, but it looks like they just paid out up front. Okay. Okay.
Or whatever. I don't know, it's looking on the website, it's a little different.
Yeah. So if there's still amounts owed, are we going to go back to FEMA for the payments on that again?
No, it's a preset amount that you can get. The only thing that's left possible that we can get is the $3,971.30 that's administrative. And I tried to speak with somebody on the phone about it, but I didn't get real clear answers on if we were gonna get that money or not.
Okay. Okay. But in terms of the work on the project that's been completed.
Yes, it was completed, I believe, in, 2023.
Okay. Great. Those were my questions.
Anybody else?
I do. First, Nick, good job on your apparatus building. So when you talk about maybe another 50,000 on that amount, that comes out of the fire side of the general budget, is that what
Yeah, it really depends. Right now, we haven't even planned for that additional cost, getting the building up and operating. So up to the point of getting the floors finished, that's already been funded. This next budget that will come out in July is where we'll look at finalizing the apron and everything else to finish that. And right now, it would come out of tax unless another, source of income comes to that.
Okay, so are you applying or trying to establish some type of added funds for that?
So it would come through Measure Z, and the way Measure Z works is the Humboldt County Chiefs Association puts in a Measure Z request every year, goes to the county, and gets either approved or denied or voluntary cuts. I sit on the Measure Z Citizens Advisory Board as a voting member, so I can't actually put in that application. The Southern Humboldt Fire Chiefs Association puts in the application. That would be the best, easiest route. Funding for fire apparatus and buildings is very hard to get, very competitive. FEMA was supposed to put out a grant for that, for buildings, and we'll be looking at expansion of our current fire station, not the auxiliary building, which we're looking at possibly $3 million to update that. Same thing with this whole building. All buildings from basically the 60s to now will be hopefully eligible for seismic retrofits, all that kind of stuff that we don't have. And so for that $50,000, it might be easier just to come out of the general fund, depending on what we can offset through other funds. If we can get another grant for something else, like fuel reduction, for example, the next 5 years, we're not putting any money into fuel reduction out of the general fund from the fire tax because we have another grant that offsets that. So that allows us to move that usually 15 to 20 grand into a different area of our budget. So right now, we have no plans to find another additional source, but however, it may just come up as we find that.
So I guess that was my next question. So are you gonna kind of drag your feet to finish it, or are you going to finish it and wait for funds?
I mean, getting it done as quickly as possible is always a priority, right? So it comes up with whatever funds come up. We're constantly prioritizing operational response. So if an engine breaks and that engine replacement is $20,000, for example, I'm going to prioritize that over finishing the building. But I would like to get that building done as quickly as possible.
The next one, Chris, as far as the grant on the sports complex, is that just if you reach out and find out, is there going to be any impact from that grant based on all the grants that are being held back?
No, that's California State Parks grant, so
so it's not gonna be impacted at all?
Not that we know of it yet.
Okay. But I'm saying, if you reached out to see if it's gonna be impacted, or are you just assuming?
I have not reached out.
Okay, so I would prefer to know more than just assuming. Okay. And then again, back to the FEMA grant, it's just administrative costs that we're thinking that maybe we could get back. So you're just gonna stay on top of that, Jessica?
Down online portal and shows on obligated, or it's obligated but not.
Thank you, that's all I have.
Anybody else? No? Jessica? No? Okay.
Yes, public comment?
Lieutenant McCall did join online, and I wanted to see if, Lieutenant McCall, if you'd like to present the report. Right now.
I heard my name, but the feedback was.
Lieutenant McCall's not there.
Oh, okay. Can you hear me now, Lieutenant McCall? Without any feedback?
I can. Can you guys hear me okay?
All right, yes, we can, thank you.
Okay. We'll see here. Oh, there's my camera. All right. Sorry, I was a few minutes late. I had another meeting that ran a little bit longer than expected there. Thank you. I don't have a lot here. I do have the stats for the period of February 15th through March 15th for the Shelter Cove area. There was a total of 82 incidents during that time, which I know seems like probably kind of an uptick from what the numbers typically seem to be. But looking at those numbers, 28 of those calls were incomplete calls. I looked into those and it appears that there was an issue. I don't know if it was a cell tower issue or maybe with just like a particular residence that was having a phone line malfunction, but it looks like that was generating a bunch of incomplete calls or 911 calls to our agency, so that accounted for almost 30 of those 82 incidents that were reported. So general numbers didn't on anything, no drastic changes there. In those numbers, we had 11 dispatch reports. So I think I've mentioned before, but those would be things that would be like a CAD documentation, somebody reporting something they don't necessarily want a law enforcement response for. They just wanted it kind of on record, or maybe it didn't meet something that would be a deputy, something in our wheelhouse, so to speak. We had 8 transfers to other agencies. I looked at some of those. Those were primarily fire and medical transfers, 6 animal problems, 5 public assist calls, 4 911 hangups. Then we had, looks like 3 CWS referrals, a couple of neighbor problems, a couple of welfare checks, a couple of general investigations, as well as unwanted subject calls. And then 1 each of a few of others, like unwanted subject, noise complaint, missed dial on 911, an alarm call, general disturbance, follow up in a patrol check. I don't show anything as far as like property crimes or anything like that for any popping up on there or any change in those types of numbers or any kind of indication that there's an uptick in any particular type of criminal activity. And I don't actually show much in the way of actual crimes reported during that time frame for the Shelter Cove area. And that's pretty much what I got for stats.
Okay.
All right, well, thank you. Take a question?
Hi, this is Arlen Reed. I was playing golf on Saturday and noticed that there was 2 gunshot holes in flag number 8. And talking with the people that I was playing with, they heard either mortars or gunfire on Thursday the 13th. And I didn't hear that was one of the complaints, but it really concerns me because the flag is the same height as like your head, and there's really no position that you can fire through the flag without endangering somebody else. But I think it was Thursday, and it was probably from somebody in the campground. It's easy enough to do a little bit of search and find out, because that's totally uncalled for. It's doing donuts on the course and on the runway is something, but shooting right downtown is something totally different. Thank you.
Thank you, Arlen.
Yeah, and I can look. I didn't see anything like that popped up for the under our the stats that were in there, but I will look around that date to see if I see any calls that appear to be related to that. Unfortunately, it's quite possible that it's like a fair number of things we hear about is people notice it, but nobody necessarily takes it upon themselves to call. So we may have never not even had it reported to us. But I will look into that, and I can follow up. And I can email the GM and just let them know if like, hey, we didn't even get called about it, or if there was some info about it, I could try and give some update to that if there's information to update them on.
Thank you. All right, thank you for taking the calls. Until next time.
Okay, I need to go back to the district grant
Yes.
topic real briefly.
Okay.
Okay. So I forgot to go to public comment for district grants. Anyone have any public comment about the state of district grants? No? Okay, move on. So item number 3, grant use and fuel production update, is that you, Chris, or is that Nick?
Awesome. So I had a request from one of the board members to bring up a greenbelt discussion item. The RID has approximately 1,200 acres of district public lands greenbelt. The greenbelt, for me personally, comes into 2 different categories. One is fuels and fire reduction of the greenbelt. The second one is parks and rec and how we're going to utilize the greenbelt. They go hand in hand, right? I'm in my position description as a fire chief, it's in there that I maintain the fuels and the fire safety for the greenbelt. Has nothing to do with parks and rec, trail use of that. However, the best way to maintain fuels in the greenbelt is to have some sort of hiking trails, biking trails, use of those greenbelt lands. For folks that aren't familiar with our greenbelt is very similar to federal land, federal public land. You can hunt on a greenbelt, provided you follow hunting regulations. You have active, you can utilize it, hike in it. Where we see conflict is where that greenbelt bumps into private land, right? And the access to the greenbelt itself. Not all greenbelt has good access. Most of it is very rugged, steep terrain. In 2022, I hiked 90% of the greenbelt doing the mapping for the USDA grant. So I have very intimate knowledge of most of our greenbelt land. There's a lot of really pretty usable greenbelt out there. It's just hard to have. And so as we're looking at fuels and fire reduction, trails, parks and rec, stuff like that, that's something that the board and staff have to assess is what the best use for that greenbelt is to provide for recreational use, fire safety, and ongoing community health within our lands. That being said, we're actively working on large-scale greenbelt improvements. Our current plan, funded through the USDA, gives us about just over $1.5 million to do a 100-foot buffer between all the RID greenbelt and the private lands. And that's just hopefully going to allow us to bring back beneficial fire through our prescribed burn program. Hopefully in 3 years, start doing large-scale prescribed burns in the greenbelt lands. Providing that 100-foot buffer is in place and giving us access to do it safely. So we're already started on that. I'm already well into my burn boss classification. We've been working through the Humboldt County Prescribed Burn Association the last 3 or 4 years. I believe that's a very good plan and it's in line with what the rest of the state is doing. However, we don't have a very in-depth plan on the Parks and Rec and the trails side that's going to be going hand in hand with that. If I could put in fire lines and then turn those into trails at the same time, it might benefit the ridge when it comes to environmental compliance and other stuff. So really is what we're looking for is giving you guys an update on what the process and the ongoing plan is, and then how the board and staff can help to accomplish that on both ends. So any questions that you guys have, I'll be happy to answer.
I'm gonna say, Nick, thank you. I mean, it's everything that I wanted when I was talking about it. I think it's a great idea to try to incorporate the trails as far as fire breaks. I think that's a phenomenal idea and it'll give us better access for our green belt, but also another added impact and really activity for our community. I think it's everything that I wanted to see, and I think it really shows exactly what we're talking about as far as the fuel reduction and whatever you're doing. So thank you, I appreciate it.
You're welcome. And staff, I know the utility company's been running the California Cal Fire inmate crews for a long time and keeping a lot of those fuel breaks, even our power line easements open that are going across the green belt. Just fair warning, a lot of that, if you guys look at other projects, you know, the city of Santa Rosa did a large project for bikes and trails and everything else. Getting ahead of the environmental compliance and the regulations is very important. Some stuff we might find we're exempt from, some stuff we won't. As far as I've looked into liability-wise, public lands are very low liability. We're kind of stated that, you know, people are taking their own safety into account out there, and it's not one of those things where if somebody gets hurt in our public land, we're automatically going to get sued. Those are the kind of information that we need to have on file and know exactly how we're protected and then the exact environmental compliance. And when we get input from the community and they get excited about doing new trails, since my time here, I've always already seen that with the mountain biker community, is they got really excited with the previous general manager. We were going to build a bunch of trails. They started working on those trails and then they looked into the environmental compliance and the regulations that we needed to do that. And then they kind of lost the wind in their sails. So getting together as a community and saying, hey, what do we actually need, and talking to the right people is super important to get ahead of that. And we're already working on the environmental compliance for our prescribed burning, which is pretty in depth. Hopefully we can get some of these new governor exemptions. Nothing we're doing includes clear cutting or, you know, making large scale environmental changes. We're basically just brushing and limbing. However, we need to follow the right policies and procedures on a state and federal level. So just fair warning on that is we might come back at some point, either Parks and Rec Committee or the fire chief, and say, hey, this is going to take a year to get done, or it's going to take X, Y, and Z amount of money to get the environmental compliance completed. Most of it's going to come through CEQA unless we can get exemptions. However, that shouldn't be a reason to not do it. You know, if we would have started this 10 years ago, the first time I heard about it, we would have been well past that and probably had a bunch of trails completed.
So my next question too, though, is so you're gonna come up with a general game plan that's gonna affect the fire department and at the same time will benefit the nature trails?
I can do as much as I can while prioritizing the fire safety side. Right? If I have something that overlaps that I can give off to the Parks and Rec Committee or to give to RID staff, I'll definitely do that. That's one of my priorities right now. However, I can't take on a Parks and Rec plan for the Greenbelt. I have way too much of this stuff to do on the fire department side. But I do believe that a lot of it overlaps, that I think the work that we're doing on the fire department side will benefit directly the Parks and Rec side as well.
Well, I'm gonna say, so it really probably starts with you in order to benefit the Parks and Rec side.
Yeah, I agree. I think our plan that's on the map that you guys have, basically sorry for me not explaining the map. It's fairly hard to tell, but the blue kind of ocean looking highlighted layer, that's going to be that 100-foot buffer, and that's around almost all green belt inside the residential district, including all the way up off the backside of Taw and separating us from all the federal land around us, so we'll have that fire break buffer. But what it does, more importantly, the green belt for Parks and Recs, it will open up that access. There's a lot of unmarked access points that people assume are private land that are actually RID plots that go all the way to roads. So we're looking at trails, parking and access are the two biggest things for that. So we're not having issues with private property. That's anywhere you go federal land wise, that's the hardest issue, is where private property meets federal land. And so that marking that and then anticipating those issues in certain areas. We've seen that with some of our fire breaks. For example, the fire break on Landis, we made a very nice fire break between two RD points where naturally you want to pop out is that somebody hiking is private land. So we had issues with people continuing the trail onto private land, even though we had nothing to do with that. And so those problems are going to be expected. It's just how the RID decides to mitigate it. It will probably come to Chris. However, I don't see that as a reason not to go. We need trails. We're going to be an eco-tourism community into the future, and we're fortunate enough to have this unused greenbelt. But I do think that you guys will be able to use a lot of my plan to look, especially at the mapping that's already done, find those access points. Just this layer itself is a huge start as far as really expensive mapping when it comes to the greenbelt. It's already done.
So when's your project complete?
2027 is the final date for we're working on getting contractors working right now to start the actual work. The prescribed burning itself will need much more in-depth environmental review, and that's like getting an exemption. And those exemptions are up right now. I just have to see if we qualify for it. Most of what it's going to be is the geology and the erosion part, because the area we're burning is so steep. We don't want to get rid of the vegetation that's keeping the hillside in place. So that's my biggest concern. I'm not concerned at all about safety. I think our fire department, the fuel break that we have in the hydrant system, and then the experience we have, we can very safely implement a prescribed burn process. However, the geology and how steep it is out here is something I can't control, so we have to be cognizant of that.
Are you doing it in phases?
Absolutely, yeah. So right now, the entire USDA project is in phases. The greenbelt is the last phase. We prioritize the escape routes and the private homes first, and that's just pure private property protection policy. So, and then we'll go into the greenbelt.
Yeah, and I'm again say thank you on the map and everything, very, very self-explanatory, but everything that I wanted when we spoke.
Yeah. You got to thank Maureen for having me put in the board package.
I actually have some questions on the map. Sorry, I'm not as smart as Jeff. So what, looking at this map, we've got the different colors for the housing, the green, yellow, red, and magenta. What do those colors indicate?
So those colors indicate the total amount of fuel reduction needed on basically 100%. So the magenta, that's 100% of that private property needs to be treated. So then that contractor comes in, they can give a rough budget estimate. Also, what it turns into is our home triage. So when we drive around it during a vegetation fire, we're looking at houses that are defendable and undefendable. If we don't have time and your house doesn't have the defendable space, we're not even going to put a fire engine there. I've got 5 fire engines and 700 homes, so we got to do some triage to make sure we have enough resources to do that. And so this is also going in the GIS layers that the firefighters will have with our hydrants, so I can see all the houses that have been treated. And an ongoing part of this USDA project is the community members need to maintain the property. We're going to come in and clear it for the first round, and then we'll be able to enforce our ordinance based off of that. So everybody gets a clean slate. That's where the houses are. So the greenhouses are folks that are either lucky enough to not have a huge fuels reduction problem, which is like 1% of the houses out here, or they've done the work themselves, which we appreciate that. The red, the yellow, those are houses that, trees aren't necessarily growing on them. However, they're getting pretty close and it's starting to become a worry for us to put a fire engine there. Honestly, those 57 units that are magenta, I wouldn't put a fire engine there just because of pure safety issues. This map has been made public. We've talked to folks. We're prioritizing a lot of the houses that are on there this summer. That was one of the biggest issues with losing the funding was we might not get to those houses. The funding's back. We are a month behind. However, we're quickly making up for that. But that's our goal, is to treat all these houses that you see here with that funding. We're funded to treat all those houses. Right now, what we're running into is people just aren't reaching out to get their houses signed up. And so we're over time, I think we're about 400 right now. So we are doing a good job out of the total 600, 658 that we're trying to reach. We only have to do 500 and I believe 48 to meet the grant. but we want to do as many as we can with the funding that we have.
Yeah.
So, I'm sorry.
So I was going to ask about retreatment. You've got these brown areas on here that say existing shaded fuel break. What does that mean?
So those have already been treated in the past by different projects, either CAL FIRE grants or through the inmate crews or fire department funded fuel breaks. Usually they're strategically located with areas that we can run heavy equipment. There's ridge tops or their saddles, places like that that are fairly clear of trees, and we can safely run equipment on there. So those will all get retreated. The one on the south side, that's that little Landis one I talked about. That was a meadow we're trying to open up through fields. It's also our training area for our saws. The other ones have been either CAL FIRE grants or we've just been clearing them through power line easements. And then everything on here is already funded. So that's all part of the USDA grant.
Yeah, great. Okay, thanks. Sorry, Jeff, go ahead.
I got one more question based on your last answer. Out of the homes, when you're done and you have, out of the 700 homes, let's say you get 500 or whatever, right? And then I know you're sending out the letter to the property owner.
Yeah.
Have you considered putting some type of notice on the actual structure to let them know that they should, about or doing the clearance?
Yeah, we have. We're gonna try and basically the whole, catching flies with sugar kind of thing first. We're trying to get as many people to voluntarily sign up for it, and also reward those people that signed up first to get the work done first. As we start running out of contractor work, that's where we're gonna aggressively go after the folks that we have to have. I can legally abate properties that are fire nuisances as a fire chief. I don't want to get to that point. I want people to voluntarily sign up. But we know straight up there's going to be people that didn't get the heads up, that weren't notified, or live out of the area, or kind of are total absentee property owners. And those people we will have to go through the abatement process. Lucky for them is we're going to use the funding for the grant to pay for it and not come back and bill them as we would use. Basically, we'd have to put a lien on the property if we paid for that the way the old ordinance 63 is set up.
But as that goes on and once this project's done, is that when the abatement process will be coming back into play?
Absolutely. So one of the reasons that we got this grant is because we already had that ordinance in place, and the USDA was telling us, hey, we're going to give you the money to do it, but we need to maintain the work that was done. And so this is the best option that we had was, all right, we're going to pay for everything once, and then the community, you take that on as a property owner in this community that you're going to maintain your property. That's part of our ordinance process. And I understand that it is very difficult in Shelter Cove. We have a very high regrowth rate, about 4 feet a year. Tan oaks obviously are worse, and they turn into a giant bush. So for me to come back and say, all right, everybody needs to maintain their property, it's unrealistic that that's going to happen. However, this is our best shot as an entire community to make it more fire safe. And we are going to have to be, have a more hardline stance on it going into the future. And it's not just us. CAL FIRE right now is looking at enforcing the 0 to 5, which is already a state law. They just don't have enforcement on it. So we will be backed by state regulations when it comes to this, and hopefully we won't be the only county agency that's pushing this, because we do need that support at the county level, especially when it comes to that lien process.
You feel that there'll be funds available afterwards, so for like a round 2, if we get into another situation like this, where it's not just about abatement?
That's a possibility. It's going to be much more competitive, obviously, with the different administration right now. Wildfires is usually bipartisan, so it's usually not up for debate whether or not wildfires are destructive. Our new map came out, and there wasn't a lot of change to our area, even with all the work that we're doing. I can't control our weather, fuel, and topography, so we're reducing the fuel all we can, but to an extent, because we're in the coastal zone, we can't go clear cut all the trees, we can't remove everything. Selective logging is coming back into style with this new administration. I'm not sure how that's going to affect the BLM or the King Range. However, some environmental compliance has been, I would say, loosened. However, you have to be careful with that. Like I said, the geology issues and affecting our streams and everything else. However, we do have an overabundance of trees that they're just now getting to the point where we can't cut them legally. However, they do need to be thinned out, or the forest is going to do it itself. When it comes to the funding side of that, because we awarded such a large grant, it is going to be just more difficult to find ongoing funding. On the other end, we have been awarded a large grant, and they want to see that maintained as well. I do think there will be some funds out there to maintain it. We've already shown that. We've stacked 7 or 8 grants on our initial 10-year plan that basically complement themselves. as they go forward. So I don't have a grant lined up right now ongoing after this. I'm kind of looking at the CAL FIRE grant goes through 2029. It's going to go through 2027. I'm just trying to make it to the end of those grants without messing anything up. However, we will be actively pursuing grants for this project and many more going into the future.
Well, no, I mean, that's my
Yeah.
point. And
I
again, you're
can't
talking,
say exactly
you're
right
talking
now.
2029, so
Yeah.
this current administration's not gonna be in office anyway, so you're really talking about a 5 to 10 year range before you're thinking, I mean, I know 4 foot a year, but what's your long-term objective before this would even have to come into play again?
Really, there were some of the properties that are just VWACs, but those are gonna have to be maintained by next year, you know, or even fire season. That's where the property owners, and I said this when we applied for this grant, it was a different board. The property owners do have to have some sort of ownership on their property. And that goes hand in hand with the RIDs, the greenbelt. It's really hard for me as a fire chief to go out and say, hey, you guys need to clear your property when none of the greenbelt has been treated. And so that's why we're having to do these hand in hand. That way the greenbelt's treated, the greenbelt's no longer a threat to the private property. And then we can go after property owners and say, hey, you guys have to do this. And then within that, normally these grants are for folks that are disadvantaged, right? Elderly people that can't go out and do the land on their own, financially disadvantaged folks. We were lucky enough to get one that covered the entire district. There's one going on in Bryceland right now that was specified for disadvantaged communities. And so not everybody could get that grant. Not everybody was eligible, right? We got that grant for everybody. And so that's something else that might be more realistic in the future, is that it would be a grant for people that physically or financially can't do the treatment, where right now anybody, right? It doesn't matter how much money you make or if you're able bodied, anybody can get this grant. And that's really rare. And so I think we were very lucky to get this grant. I would like to say we are going to have a good opportunity in the future to get it, but I can't say for certain that we'll get that. But I know we have to, as the RID, not just fire, but water, power, we have to get grants to do the projects that we need to do to replace our infrastructure.
Well, I think the most important part is limbing the trees up and all the undergrowth more than the brush, but I agree with your comment. And again, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, anybody else? No?
Just real quick. First of all, yeah, thank you for all the work you've been doing, and definitely, as far as the trails and the fire breaks, they do go hand in hand and will be a point of discussion at future Parks and Rec committee meetings. And maybe at some point, I don't want to take away from what you're working on, that perhaps you could join us just for a meeting to.
Yeah. No, I'm have a rain check on the Shelter folks too. So. However, I work Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday on a 24-hour shift, and then I'm usually here Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday too. So if you guys want to come talk to me directly, we have more time. I'm available for that. Just shoot me an email or text.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, anyone from the public got a comment on this? No? All right, thank you, Nick, that was great.
Yeah, thanks.
Move on to the 4th of July and fireworks safety. Chief?
Thank you guys for hearing this. I know there was a little bit of miscommunication of exactly what this discussion item was. This one is for me to hear from you guys about direction on where the community and the RID wants to go with 4th of July. It's no secret that 4th of July for the fire department is by far the biggest threat we have every year. We run an entire month's worth of 911 calls in one night, usually on 4th of July, anywhere from 12 to 20 911s in like a 5-hour period. The last 3 years, we have had small fires mitigated by the fire department. Everything kind of worked in our favor. Last year, we had just canceled, showed up here, people were taking their gear off, and then somebody went and started a fire after we had sat there for 6 hours and made sure there were no fires started. What I am stuck between is aggressive enforcement of shutting down fireworks in Shelter Cove, right? We're talking illegal fireworks that are already illegal, already have California safe and sane regulations backing us on that. However, realistically, people know Shelter Cove is a place that can come light off illegal fireworks, right? And it has been, we've turned a blind eye. We had a very large, I put it in the report discussion item description. 2013, we had the large fire that almost burned the houses. The guys, I was actually on a separate CAL FIRE fire. I missed the whole thing. The guys made a heroic, I'd say, stop. There was a guy stuck on his roof, trying to protect his roof. If his house would have burned down, he would have for sure lost his life. They had saved multiple other houses. Literally went, kicked in the front door and we're fighting fire off the back porch. Since then, we changed how we operate on 4th of July, basically at the expense of the fire department and the CERT team. We boosted our last year, we paid a oil bulge fire to come help us with mutual aid for the first time ever and support their department. Realistically, CAL FIRE is going to prioritize Redding, Santa Rosa, LA, large population centers over Shelter Cove. So if we have a busy early fire season, there's a chance we won't have CAL FIRE resources, right? Or they might have one engine coming out of Garberville we got. Obviously, fire can move a lot quicker than engines can drive from Garberville we got. What we're looking at is where does the community want to go as a whole, right? The fire department can be the bad guy. They can go in there and they can shut fireworks down. We've done it before. The problem was is once we enforced the beach, we worked with the sheriff's department after that fire. We came in, we had multiple officers on quads. We went, they wrote a bunch of tickets. CAL FIRE prevention was out here. We shut it down. And what happened was people went everywhere else but the beach. They were shooting out of cul-de-sacs. They were going up in the mountains and shooting them off the mountains. We lost control over our enforcement. That being said, the system that we have now is very good. We use 13 spotters. We have fire department members throughout. We have an aggressive zero tolerance anywhere but the Cove Beach. However, we have had 2 fires the last 2 years. Technically 3 ones are quite a bit smaller. My fear is that even with that enforcement in the last 10 years, it only takes 1 fire to run through the community, right? Depending on how our fuels are that time of year. 3 years ago or 4 years ago, it was raining during 4th of July. Right? Our parade was rained out. If we get that, great, not really a big deal. Right? The last 2 years, it has been quite a bit drier, and then we always have that chance of having this 80, 90-degree winds coming through and having to be a really hot throughout July. We've had that before in my time. We, as a community, need to decide what we want to do with 4th. Or do we leave it as is, and the fire department's going to do as we're doing now? Are there, in my opinion, there are economic issues with shutting down fireworks and having people, see it as a non-fun area, because people do come out here to do that for 4th of July. It's realistic. We came up here as kids from Sacramento and shot fireworks off on the beach. And then at what point is it outside the RID's control to do another event? We've talked about in the past. If you want us to shut down fireworks on the beach, there needs to be an alternative for people to go do. If it's a professional fireworks display, laser shows, a festival, whatever it is, we need to have something to say, hey, we're shutting down fireworks on the beach now, and this is what the community is doing instead of that, right, to attract people out here. And there's going to be a transitional period to that. It's a cultural thing out here. People know and people come out here. We could shut down fireworks this year, right? That's what the community wants. It's what the RID board wants. I have my own feelings about that as a fire chief, as far as we're going to see the same thing we saw in the past where people are going to move out, right? But over time, eventually that goes away. People understand we're enforcing it. We can put a firework checkpoint up on top of the hill like they do coming out of that. There's a bunch of different options. However, what that does to the economy out here, with fishing gets shut down for rockfish season like it did last year, right? So we need to be cognizant of that as the board, as the fire department, is what effects our actions have on the community as a whole. But I'll tell you right now, mine is public safety, right? That's my priority, it has to be. And so with that, I do think we have a program that has shown validity over the last 10 years. However, there's always that one chance, right? And that one chance is where it does worry me, saying that, hey, we're going to turn a blind eye to fireworks on the beach, and then 1 year it runs up dead man's all the way to the top, and we've got Harlan's house and everything else on the top affected. And at night, CAL FIRE aircraft aren't flying up here right now. So that program is slowly moving north, but right now they don't have that option. So that's kind of what I'm going to hear for you guys is what the board thinks. I've heard from previous boards, and it was kind of all over the place, right? It was kind of shut down fireworks. We had the community came in and demanded it after 2013, and we had a large reaction to that. And then now I would say we're back to pretty much normal, minus a lot more money in the economy. So we're not seeing as many fireworks as we did previously. But last year it was a local, it wasn't a tourist that started the fire, right? Like he brought down a ton of fireworks, shot them all off again, and was continuing to shoot them off after the fire department had left the area for our stage. So that's any questions? I'm definitely
myself, I appreciate everything. I've been doing the same thing. I've been saying we need an alternative, but if the alternative or the transition makes us less safe, I don't know how practical that is. Maybe we start looking at putting forth some type of alternative event, and maybe it starts to lean people in that direction. But then there's also how you're going to pay for it. So that's a lot of items for discussion if that's the route we wanted to go. I'd like to hear the rest of the board and see what they have as far as input. Anybody?
I mean, okay, so I grew up in Shelter Cove. I've seen all the, when I was a kid, there was a guy that used to shoot a cannon off into the ocean, and that was pretty cool, like a little mini one. So honestly, I think things have gotten better, especially now that everyone doesn't have a bunch of extra money to, blow on fireworks. I mean, I thought the past 2 years, I think you guys have done an amazing job. I felt really safe. Like, we would just like hang up at the top, but I mean, I felt like the crowd was pretty good. And honestly, I would be more scared of people going over to like other areas of the cove and setting off fireworks, where it's like kind of, to me, it just feels like, okay, everyone's there. They kind of just like blow them off and get it done. I was kind of surprised. I didn't think that the fireworks went on all weekend, which like, in past years, it'd be like, oh my God, just like, dogs scared all weekend, don't want to let them out. But I kind of felt like most of the fireworks actually got let off on the 4th of July, which I found pretty shocking. And I don't know. Yeah, it'd be nice to have a new celebration, but then that costs money. I don't, yeah, I honestly think that you've been handling it great the way you have. I know it's a lot of work for you guys. And I don't know. I was just thinking that maybe it's kind of changing anyways. Like a lot of the major firework offenders, are our local people. And I think that they're not going to be spending as much money on fireworks. And so, I mean, obviously we could have people coming up from San Jose and places like that. But I don't know. I really do feel like the culture is kind of changing though. Like it just felt, I mean, it felt more mellow to me last year for sure, like the most mellow, even though there were a lot of people up at the boat ramp, but it felt just kind of like, I don't know. So yeah, I don't really have any say, but I would just say like, I really thought that, the fire department did a great job. And I think keeping it in one area, kind of like a controlled chaos, would kind of be my assessment, but.
I agree with you. We thought it was much more mellow last year too, and we went home and then somebody started a fire.
Yeah, right?
I do
gonna
100% agree. Just coming up here from when I was a kid too and seeing, the guy that was shooting the cannon, we had the fire, guy that had the fire show every year, and then there was guys that were making their own fireworks. The other thing that prompted this too, specifically this year, was what happened in Crescent City last year.
Oh, yeah.
Where the kid got hit, collapsed his lungs, it hurt, like it was MCI, it hurt, 30 or 40 people. And we've had that on our beach as well too. It doesn't get as much publicity as our fires, but we had a guy throw the box of mortars in the fire, and like 4 or 5 people had seizures. We had people get crushed at the same time as the fire, and that was, how was it, 4 years ago, Jack? 4 years ago. And that's what I do agree. It is getting more mellow, but at the same time, just take one. And that's as the fire chief is. Obviously, I can't condone any illegal fireworks. We say that every year. Hey, Shelter Cove is not a place to set off illegal fireworks. We have a zero tolerance for it. However, safety-wise, we can get around not sending our guys down that beach. Right? I can't send our guys into a mob of people and start writing tickets and taking away fireworks. It's just not safe. So I have no obligation to send our guys into an unsafe area, and so that's why we don't send people down there. But I have had community members come up to us while we're patrolling and say, "Why aren't you guys stopping this? You guys should be writing tickets." I look at law enforcement and they say, hey, I'm not going down there. I'm not sending my guys down there. We don't have guns. So, but yeah, I do appreciate that. And, I do think the guys are doing a great job. The search team has been amazing. But last year was their second fire in a row. And that's where it's like, all right, how long can we keep this going for without larger change?
Yeah, Chief, I love the idea of having an organized event. I think I agree that it does cost money. That said, I think that the local businesses generally do a good job of having different events like the Hops Fest that they do at Jippo, and some different things like that, where we do get a bunch of people that come into the cove and do different things, and we have the the hospice event and things like that, things that can generate some money for those particular organizations or those particular groups. And I think if there's a way that we could work with some of the local businesses to bring in, some funding that maybe we could match, or maybe we could charge, for folks to go into certain areas or to do certain things. I think that's a great idea. I'm didn't grow up in Cove, but I grew up in a small coastal community, and there were parts of San Luis County that we only went to on 4th of July as a kid just to go and watch the fireworks. It was just like, yeah, we just go to Cayucas every 4th of July, and that was like the only time we went there. And so it's a I think it's a great idea, and the place gets packed, and I lived closer to Pismo Beach, and so we just never went there as locals, but it was great for the local businesses, like you say. So I think figuring out a way to work on that. I don't know if that'd be a Parks and Rec thing, but maybe we could do something where we worked with the with the local businesses and got together with them, because whether you're a hotel or a restaurant or a cafe, which are kind of the majority of the businesses down there, I think they would all stand to benefit from that. Whether it's breakfast on Sunday morning, or whether it's drinks next to the beach the night before, or however. So I think I think there could potentially be some incentive there, and even just like I say, for the fish fry for hospice at the end of the summer, I mean, that brings in a ton of people from all over the community. So having another one of those to help with the local businesses, I think would be great.
Anybody else?
Yes, I agree that it does help our local economy having people come out here for the 4th of July. However, with that said, I do have big concerns, like that it only takes one big fire to sweep through our community, and at that point, it's not economically beneficial to the community, both economically and safety-wise. I have a little bit of a different perspective. For last year, we patrol the zoo area for CERT, and it was definitely a lot busier than any other 4th of July that we've experienced in the last 20 plus years. And so I think trying to help shift the culture of the community to doing something more organized would be beneficial, something that we have more control over. And then my other concern is the amount of trash that is left behind. Last year was really bad, and I know that we don't have jurisdiction over boats out in the ocean setting off fireworks, but the amount of rubbish that was left behind was just totally unacceptable. And although we do have community members that go down the next morning to clean up, by then oftentimes we still get a lot of trash, but a lot has already been washed away into the ocean. So it would be nice to be able to have something more organized to hopefully help mitigate that. And I think a transition time, that's to be expected. But again, it's just a matter of time before Shelter Cove has a big fire. And I would hate for that to be happen during a big holiday, all under the name of, we're bringing in money into the community, when in fact we're putting our community at risk. So I think that this could be a topic for the Parks and Rec Committee to looking at ways that we could help address that. And I appreciate you bringing this to our attention. I know right now we don't have any funding for something like that, but I think it would be worth looking into further, even if it's not done for this year, but just starting that conversation. And then again, from a district liability standpoint, definitely we cannot publicly say we're turning a blind eye to illegal fireworks.
Yeah, I like the alternative. It's just, how do we transition to it? The culture's been this way for many, many years before I got here. I haven't been here that long. So that's why I kind of was looking for some direction from people that have lived here, how we can achieve this. I think it's really something we need to try to figure out. because it's the future. I mean, we all sit around our homes on 4th of July, just waiting to turn on the water and have to get out of here. And that's not fair for us either, you know? So, yeah, I would love to change the culture out here. I just don't know how to achieve it. So, thank you for bringing this up and getting the discussion going. I appreciate that. And yeah, maybe the Parks and Recs could look at some type of way to or at least find some funding for that, and then we can get things rolling in the right direction. I don't know how much a show is, whether it be laser or drones or whatever, but I'm sure it's quite a bit.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. I was gonna say when I lived in Santa Cruz, it was pretty cool. In Aptos, they had a fireworks show, but it was in I want to say like September, October. Back then, obviously, it was way wetter, but so maybe they've changed. But it was, I mean, just like thinking here, like if we could do like honestly like a fireworks show at like a wetter time of the year, and then yeah, like an absolutely no fireworks like during the summer. Like I could see something that like completely changing it. So it's like, yeah, if you want to come and camp like during the summer or like 4th of July, but then like if you want to see like our fireworks show, that's like more in November or when it is really wet and like would be very enjoyable. But I thought that was kind of cool because yeah, where we lived, it was like, oh my gosh, yeah, it was shut down on the beach. But then you had like an alternative later in the year. And so it kind of did just like upended the whole, 4th of July celebration in a good way. You went and hiked or did other things.
That's on the state agenda right now. However, their number one discussion point is economy with that. They're talking about banning fireworks during the summer entirely in California, and what was happening in LA, and loss of life. I think Hawaii had the same issue last year. Yeah, there's been discussion about New Year's doing that during the New Year's celebration.
Yeah.
People do light off fireworks during New Year's here. Wear jackets, so it's a lot different than on the beach. But yeah, that's an option as well, and that goes back to that transition point. And just to remind the community, we had the same discussion over 10 years ago now, right? And so if we would have came up with a solution 10 years ago, it probably would have been phased to where we might have had that alternative working already. And so that goes with a lot of our projects that we discussed, following up with that.
I have a couple comments. First of all, every 4th of July scares the hell out of me. So I'm just going to start with that one. And again, I think that there's some great ideas. I think that as a child, and I'm going to say, if you can have fireworks at the Hollywood Bowl all year long, then we can easily have a fireworks show here. It's about the right pyrotechnics. So I don't think that's the issue. I think that the first thing that I'd like to know is numbers. Rather than be ambiguous, if we know what does a fire show cost, and what does that entail? Because we don't have to have a big one, we have to have a small one. I think we have to be proactive. I think that to be proactive, that to shrink the culture, I think that we need back to what we were talking about. If we say no on the beach, then they're going to go other ways. So I'm going to say it's no other anywhere else, and let's find them and give a designated spot down on the beach that eventually we can shrink as the culture changes. I think that it could be a great event, back to like what Wes was saying. As a kid, when I grew up, it was an event where they were throwing, rings around the Coke bottles and ping pong balls and the fish. And it was an event, and then it was capped off by the fireworks show in the middle of a golf course. So we have a middle of a runway. So we do have, and a golf course that surrounds it, as long as it's done professionally. Again, so I think what we really need to do, being proactive, is at one point in time, my understanding is when they shut down that fireworks show, that they've had other calls, and then they rolled a police car down that ramp, right? So that's the culture that needs to change. So I think that that's over time, but again, and then I'm gonna go back with Tesha on the trash. I wouldn't mind, and Nick, I don't know that you can do it, I don't know that you don't, but we have a quad. If we could pull a trailer behind the quad, and at the same time reinforce sanity and common sense as we're also picking up trash, and we can inform people that might be the way to start this cultural change. But I have to say that I think that as a community, I think that as much as I want to have extracurricular activities, it's not going to do us any good if we're not here because we got burned down. So I think that it's very important to do an organized event so that we can change that structure.
Yeah, I agree. We are a big part of the trash pickup. We did start, it's on the letter, we started the safe and sane area at the clubhouse 3 or 4 years back, ran by CERT, and that has given the first step of a very cheap alternative where we had people, we wanted to get as many kids away from the boat ramp as possible. And so we saw parents that were like, hey, I don't feel comfortable down there. One year a gun got pulled, the guy was shooting off his gun into the air, but you couldn't tell if it was a firework or not. Our firefighter was down there and stopped it. Yeah. With that being said, the trash thing, it's a great idea. I think there's other local community groups that would be better suited for that. Usually we're running fire emergency calls for that. I do think that's a great idea with the educational part. Along the lines of what you suggested with the designated area, we've done that. Every once in a while, people will be shooting off fireworks way down at deadbands, and part of it is the tides, right? When we have a high tide, it pushes everybody into that boat ramp area, and then we have the fireworks that get shot backwards and everything else. In the last 3 years, we've had high tides during 4th of July.
But I'm going to say back to what I said, I think that we give a designated area to kind of change this culture of ours. And then anything outside that designated area, we find them. I mean, again, it back to that, carrot and the stick. So I do think that we can slowly change the atmosphere of it and really make it more an event. And I don't think that part of that change in the culture doesn't also mean that we can't have a smaller fireworks show, but also bring in drones. I mean, there's other ways to have a phenomenal experience or event, and it doesn't necessarily have to be, fireworks. So I think that even the laser light show would be an interesting thing, depending how we structure it. And I agree with you, other organizations could fill you in because I really don't want to take you away from being ready to fight a fire if it has to happen.
I'm pretty good talking our crew into things, but picking up trash on 4th of July might be the end of that. So, thanks, Evan.
We'll get it. Don't worry about it.
Anybody else? No? Public comment about 4th of July, fire safety?
Oh, meeting.
Mr. Reed, please.
No way.
Scapo's already in with the quad and the trailer, and just say something simple like, Shelter Cove likes their community pretty, not trash. Something simple, but to go down there. But also you could have everybody volunteer their fireworks, to give it to somebody that is in charge of all the fireworks. You just make one safety spot, where they're in charge of it. And then you could also put it as this is donated by this family, and then have like people vote on it afterwards. Like, wow, that family really got the good fireworks. So take it out of their hands, is get it into professional hands. And I don't think drones and fireworks go good together at all. Lasers maybe, but not drones.
Might need some help for
I'm here for
Yeah, my name is Bud Lair. I've been around Shelter Cove for a while. Probably some of the better fireworks shows that we've seen in the 80s and 90s when things were hectic. There were police cars getting turned over on the ramp and everything, where a couple of the fishermen took it into their own hands and built a little barge. And they gathered all of the fireworks, the illegal fireworks, from the people in the hills and everybody, and they all went out into the harbor, and there was a designated group that lit off these fireworks. And it was busy. I mean, the whole surrounding of the cove, and all the people were standing at the fences in the parks, and they lit off the fireworks, and everybody could see them. It wasn't chaos. It was actually pretty organized and worked really well. Thanks.
Thanks, Bill. Yeah.
Jack.
morning, Jack Cargate. And actually, I just thank you guys for taking this up and taking a look at it. Obviously, like Nick on the fire safety side, I'm on the safety end of it. I'm one of those who's out there, all day and night taking care of it. But I would just like to say, as a former business owner, I can say 4th of July period was our biggest time of the year. I made probably 3 times over, and holiday periods were always big, but I probably made triple the amount during the 4th of July period. And I think that's true of any business out here. We see all of our VRBOs and everything else is kind of at its peak. So I think, as has been suggested by many of you, having an alternative event at that period would be phenomenal. I think having like another fish feed or something like that, I'm not going to speak to what kind of event, but I think having an alternative would be great. Again, I think, as you all know, it will be a transitional period, and I think a lot of planning will be required to get it to just launch effectively. So I think 2026 is probably a good idea of looking at. But I just kind of wanted to give the business owner perspective, because that was our big moneymaker of the year, and something that we always planned on, even in the slowest years. It was really what we kind of relied on to kind of kick off that period. And I agree with you. If you hear fireworks, I may be present around New Year's, but we just don't have the businesses open and available kind of in that's getting to our off season. So we know places like Mimo Chimo, they're starting to get ready to shut down. And maybe in a transition, that could be something that they kind of start building up to. But I think that's going to take a transition time for everybody. Because as we all know, everybody I know for me personally, after that little boost of New Year's and stuff, that was when basically it just died off. And I knew I was pretty much going into stasis for like 2 months until people started kind of coming out of hibernation and coming back to the cove. So again, thank you guys for taking this up. I know I personally, I enjoy the 4th of July stuff. I've been out here almost 20 years enjoying it and everything. So I personally don't have an issue with it. I'm on the fire safety end of it now, so I got to kind of look at a different light. So yeah, I think definitely having that alternative here is great. We just have so many people who are so ingrained in coming here for that period. It's generational now. The people have been coming out here camping and doing whatever with families, as many of you guys have said that you did. And so, yeah, I think having it during that point of a time is critical as well. So, thank you.
All right, thanks, Jack. Anybody else?
I just have one more comment. It just made me think, so what can we do to like support you guys during that weekend? Like say just like the regular citizens of Shelter Cove, like sodas or food, or I don't even, yeah.
For the fire department specifically, to get that word out, right? We are really pushing the current plan, which is 0 tolerance anywhere else but the beach.
Mm-hmm.
So business owners tell the folks, the hotels, the CERT team does amazing. They usually get the word out quite a bit. And then really it's sit and kind of wait to see what the weather's going to do. Based on tide and weather. And also, I mean, the economy and how many people are coming out here too, travel and all that. But yeah, I know kind of the culture of the cove is we want to bring more people out. We're doing different events. We're opening more businesses. And the fire department has to react to that. So I appreciate it. Yeah, if you want to come talk to the guys and tell them great job, all of our guys appreciate atta boys and atta girls. So, but other than that, just being safe. And if you guys see something, going back to what the lieutenant said, is call 911. That's the biggest thing. Is our spotters. Anytime there's an illegal firework at Black Sands, we're trying to change that culture. Hey, call 911. It's the quickest way to get a hold of us. And so, and that's not just 4th of July. Basically, as soon as it's late May going into June, any fire threat or emergency, you guys got to call 911, or else we don't even know about it. We'll hear car accidents, fires. The fire that burned down the house and just before Christmas, that thing was fully involved when the fire department got there. So it had been burning for a while and nobody called 911, including the homeowner. When the guys got there, it's a 2-minute drive from the station. They were already here at drill. Probably in total from the time the 911 went off to where they were there fighting fire was 5 minutes, and that thing was already a total loss. Right? So there's no charge to 911. It can be intimidating, but those folks are there to help you with whatever. I had a call for somebody that needed a welfare check. Nobody called 911. They put it on Facebook first. Right? Social media is not an emergency response network. You have to call 911, and that's really the biggest thing you guys can push to the communities. That there's no harm, no foul. If it ends up not being an emergency, I'd rather take a chance and for us to go check it out instead of saying that whatever the community thinks is or isn't an emergency. Thanks for the question.
I personally would like to keep this item a continuing discussion item, keep it on the burner. I think I'd like to bring this back next month as well, so that we can keep going on it. I think that I would like, and I don't know who I would direct this to, but I would like to know more information, what it would take for a professional protactic or whatever firework company to cost to come here. I'd like to know more about numbers and stuff. I would also like if Parks and Rec, the committee would like to take that on. I think that would give us also another community-based approach to this, but I think that we need to keep this an active conversation, especially with 4th of July coming.
Thank you, Jeff. I think that the Parks and Rec Committee could look into this even further. And we just had our agenda setting meeting for the next, but I think we could add that.
Okay. I guess that's it.
Yes.
Okay. All right, we'll move on to board member staff reports. Board member reports. We'll start there. Dasha, you've been gone.
Yep.
Anybody got anything? Jeff?
I'm gonna say I've talked to a number of people as far as the Parks and Rec Committee, so I think that they're doing a good job. I look forward to hearing that report. I did a couple of webinars and more to follow, one on strategic planning. One of the things that I really learned on the strategic planning, which is a conversation we had, that one of the comments was that as many people should be involved as possible. And my first reaction was that we limited the number of committee members to 7. I think that we should have had more, or that we should have more on that committee based on that strategic planning discussion that I had in the webinar. So I think that's an interesting approach as well. I look forward to hearing the report. I also know that they have a tremendous amount of ideas on that from that committee, and that I'm hoping that they're going to start narrowing them down from, I believe, 25 to at least 5, so that we can really start making some type of impact. Because at the end of the day, it's all about funding. So no matter what we do, and that goes back to the fire department. Now, me personally, I think that on this 4th of July fireworks show, I hate to even wait till next year, as Jack was saying. I think that I wouldn't even mind seeing if we can't be more proactive and make it even this year. I know we're running out of time, so time-wise, it's probably not realistic. However, to me, out of that sports or sports action committee, I think the number 1 should be fireworks show. I mean, again, it goes back to what you were saying last time, Nick, about the first thing is fire, the second thing is water, and then what's the third one is probably prevention. And I think that a fireworks show that's done professionally is number 1 on prevention. And I really do, Nick. I think that we give a designated area, and then you go start ticketing, because I think that's the only way you're going to change behavior.
Okay. Anybody else? I think we had some board member tours that went on last month, didn't we?
Yes. I did a little bit of a tour. I think I took up way too much of folks' time, so thank you for that. I didn't get to the fire department, so that's on the list, and then also checking out some of the other tanks and stuff. So that was interesting. The SCADA stuff was interesting too. It's amazing how disparate that system is, and how much work is actually there. But it sounds like they're making some pretty good progress in a pretty short period of time. I've also started to do some training online as well, starting with the mandatory stuff. Thank you for those reminders and that helped, Jess. Yeah, so I look forward to finishing my tour, and yeah, working on some of that stuff that's interesting about strategic planning. So yeah, that's for me.
Kristen, you got anything?
No, I have nothing to report. Thank you.
All right.
Just reminders.
Yeah, this is training. This is online training as well. That's right.
Yeah, your 2-year mark, Brian.
Okay, well, what?
Your 2-year mark.
Yeah. Well, actually, I've got a little bit more to do in a few more months, but anyway, we'll get that squared away with Jessica's nagging. I'll get it done. But that's it for director's reports.
Hey, Mike, I have one more comment.
Uh-huh.
And I don't know that I hate to keep throwing too much on the Sports Action Committee, but I guess I'm going to. I know that we have a birthday coming up for Red, the 60-year birthday thing. And so I think that might be something that we want to do, a Back to West, an organized event. I think that gives us a great possibility. And I'm not saying that it has to be on the actual date, but it would definitely be if there's a point in time that would help the businesses, that's a slower point in time. It would be something that I think that we need to celebrate. It's 60 years that Shelter Cove is official, and oh God, I love it here.
Okay. All right.
So kind of on that, when I was living in Missouri, there was this little town called Lupus, and they used to have the Lupus Chili Festival every year. And they did that, and people would come, and the community was super small, and they would volunteer to provide chili and do different stuff, and folks from all around would come to this Riverside community. They'd have little bands and stuff like that, but it was basically to pay for the utilities for the and so I don't know if like having an annual RID, not chili festival necessarily, but something to help raise some money for RID or something. But,
Yeah.
It'd be good for sports.
Oh,
Yeah, that'd be actually kind of fun.
yeah.
For dodgeball.
yeah, just $10 a ticket or something.
I think that's a great idea. Yeah.
Anything else? Anyone else? Director's reports? No? All right. Chris?
All right.
Take it away.
I'll do a little synopsis of my activities for the month of February. A lot of meetings, staff, board, community members, personnel meetings, monthly Parks and Rec committee meeting, where there was a really good presentation by Diana Totten on their plans for Coral Point. The photo there. LOES documentation, completed that. Worked on 2024 RID year in review report for SCPOA. Began working on the water wastewater department strategic plan. Coordinated with staff and a contractor on resuming electrical service to residents in Lower Pacific, so it's still ongoing. Worked with customers on payment plans. Met online with our risk management insurance provider, GSRMA, to conduct our annual review of the risk management accreditation program. Attended a demo webinar from a prospective utility billing software company. So hopefully in the future, customers will be able to go online and access their bills. They can get bill pay reminders on their phone. That's kind of where we're trying to go. Corresponded with the county building department and volunteer community member, civil engineer Mike Bruno on the grant-funded sports court project. We're working with the county right now to satisfy some requests, including developing a stormwater control plan, grading plans, and enhancing the site survey with setbacks to property lines. So they're still in the county review process. It's ongoing. We're also met online with staff, a community member, and a representative from PG&E to discuss the potential for Shelter Cove microgrid. There is a microgrid incentive program that PG&E funds, but we're still trying to determine if we are eligible for that program, since we are not exactly purchasers of electricity from PG&E. Met online with county representatives to go over the 5-year renewal of the hazard mitigation plan. It's a multi-jurisdictional plan that the whole county is doing right now. Nick actually is helping out with that. I went to a meeting about that yesterday. Worked on and also submitted a technical assistance grant to the North Coast Resource Partnership. basically what I aim to do there is see if they can help design a turnaround and maybe a small, like 5 parking lot proposal for Little Black Sands Beach, because I know it's very difficult to get down there and turn around. And just worked on updates to district ordinances and also an ongoing review with EPA-funded nonprofit Moonshot Missions who completed their assessment report for the district's potable water infrastructure. And they're working on finding possible future funding for the projects they have identified. So this is going to be a good thing for our water infrastructure. And also corresponding with Verizon, they want to add equipment to our communications tower at Kelly Road. So working on that. And yeah, gave Wes a tour of the facilities, and we need to finish that, and also need to give Tristan a tour too. So that completes my report.
Chris, I had a quick question on the communications tower. Is that space leased? Do we lease that to Verizon?
We have leases with. I don't think we have a lease with Verizon yet, but we have leases with other cell phone companies.
Right. So
they pay us.
Right. So Verizon would be paying us to use that tower.
Yeah.
Okay.
I have a couple questions too. First of all, on the sports car with Mike Bruno, would the same issues be coming up if we would have used the existing plan that we already paid for?
I'm not sure.
Could you find out for me, please? Second, what would be the impact on the Verizon to the community, if any?
I imagine the Verizon coverage would be better out here.
Yeah, I know, I mean, again, so we have, unfortunately, every once in a while, there's blinking lights that keep to go and don't ever seem to shut off. So I don't know that has any issue or not, but again, I was just curious if
there are actually 2 towers at that site. That flashing light one was from the Coast Guard tower, the taller one.
The white one that went off forever and it would be like Chinese water torture. No. Okay, so that was.
Yeah, we addressed that with the Coast Guard on that one. They eventually got someone to come fix that.
And I'll be curious to see what that lease potential is with Verizon. How can it hurt?
Did someone comment? It sounds like one of the issues with the sports court is the stormwater mitigation that you guys are dealing with currently.
They just wanted a plan. There was no plan with what was submitted to them. So
Yeah.
They wanted a plan.
So to answer your question, Jeff, that particular part of it has been addressed with the original design, the stormwater mitigation.
Right, so
Just
I guess my issue is if it's already been addressed with the original one, why we use the original plan? But the question would be, can we use some of that knowledge and work product that we've already accomplished for that position with the new plan that was submitted?
And I think we can, and we're also using like a previous topographical map that was developed for another project on the same properties.
Okay.
We've been able to utilize some past projects.
I saved, any way to save money?
And Mike's volunteering his time to bring that plan up to date, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
And yeah, the storm drain runoff, that's like pretty standard nowadays. Before you didn't have to really worry about it, but with JIPO, I think we were one of the first projects where you really had to account for where your stormwater went. So that's what the cool swale is. So yeah, pretty run of the mill.
Administration next?
All right, in administration, a lot of the stuff that I do or our department does runs parallel with what the GM is doing, so I won't repeat what he said. It looks like a lot of February was lots of reports. We spent a lot of time reporting on things, including the annual electric power industry report. And so in 2024, Shelter Cove used 3,778 megawatt hours of power that was distributed to customers. That was kind of interesting. We also had to report on any potential income we received through agreements and leases, which takes a look at every single thing that ever happened at the community center, whether or not fees were paid. We have to list all that. And it also includes our power rentals and Frontier uses our poles for their phone service. So we report on all of that stuff to the county. Um, so another thing that we did was work with GSRMA. And every year we have to complete an evaluation of our risky areas that we do. And we rate ourselves on that. And depending upon our score, that helps give us back a rebate on our annual payment that we pay to them. And so part of that does include trainings for the board. So I just want to encourage all of you to do at least 1 year of extra training every year because you get points for that. And also to make sure you do your 2 other trainings that are mandatory every 2 years. Because if I can't prove that we've done them, then I have to give us a lower score. Let's see. What else did we do? We looked at our appropriations limit, which is the amount of taxes that we can collect. It was a thing that started with the state many years, I believe it was 1983. And a limit is set, and every year it goes up potentially or down a little bit, depending on the consumer price index. So we can look at that and see how close we are to our appropriations limit and how much we can collect in taxes. And I guess the other thing that hasn't been reported yet out loud is that we have began our CPR and first aid training for all of the staff. And so that was we completed the online component, and I believe we have an in-class component with Nick as well coming up soon.
All staff required?
Yeah, all staff.
Wow.
I know the administration has completed their online component so far.
Is that annually? Is it going to be every 2 years?
There's a lot more detail in the report if you guys have any questions about anything. I try to give a little explanation about all these reports so you can get a little bit of history and understanding about what exactly it is instead of just looking at what you report.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. You said that you digitized the 2014 board packets. Was that a typo? Did you mean 2024 or are we?
No.
Okay.
We've been working on digitizing all of them, so during that month.
Okay, great. So you're just kind of going back and, so next month you'll start, or this month, I guess you'll start 2015 or
Yeah,
how is that?
2015, I think we're on the 2017 now.
Okay, so you're just kind of going through and digitizing it. Okay,
Yep.
Great. That's great.
So your megawatt hours, does that include generators?
This was just a customer distribution is what we want to report on. The district does use a high percentage of the power that does come, but the sewer plant is a lot of power to run.
But no, to answer that too, I don't think it wouldn't, if we were on generators, that wouldn't be included with that.
That was my question.
Oh, sorry.
So wait, I'm sorry, I'm misunderstanding, I think. So you're talking about this, is this the amount of electricity that we purchased as a district or the amount of electricity that we provided as a district?
It's the amount, okay, so it subtracts out what the district uses, what is just lost in the lines. This is only, so we take the number that comes across, I subtract out the district usage, the amount that's just lost, and how much we actually charge to customers is what's reflected in that.
So why wouldn't that include the generators? Because customers are charged for the generator power that they use.
Oh, you know what, I have to look at it, I don't remember this before, a couple months ago, it might include the generator hours that are in there, I'm not sure.
Yeah, because it would.
If it's coming from the customer meters, it would.
Yeah.
I was thinking it's coming.
No, I would imagine it would.
Good transition into
Yeah.
Perfect. Tell us about the generators, Johnny.
I'll wrap it up, John, if you want to do it.
All right, so last month, we continued our line clearance tree trimming. We worked on the tie line. Called in for a customer outage on Beach Road. Customer disconnect. to replace meter jaws. We also completed our CPR training, and we had, Wes come down to the generator plant for,
Any updates on our new line truck?
they had the chassis last time I talked to them. They're supposed to start building it this month.
And Frank couldn't be here today, but I can cover his department. As you can see, mostly routine tasks, weed abatement, installing a new water heater in the control building. They replaced one of the clarifier rotating assembly pump, calibrating turbidimeters. Worked on, one of the bigger projects, the fitness trail has some failing culverts in it, and that is no longer a county road, so we are trying to help out repair the culverts that are failing there, which could also impact our water and wastewater lines that run through there. They worked on that, gave Wes a tour. They also covered up some pressure reducing valves out there in the system to keep them from freezing. Backflow preventer testing, calibrating turbidimeters, heat lamps replaced at wells to keep chlorine lines from freezing with cold weather. More weed abatement and burn piles up at Omar Tank, which is at the end of Cougar Road. And looks like for parks, all they have is vehicle maintenance. Any questions?
Yeah, so when I did my tour, there was that portion of the road that had been washed out, and it had some replacement, and there were some issues there as far as like the replacing our lines going across the road there, and there was some discussion about that, and of course, changing out those culverts. Has there been anything else done as far as that goes, or any determinations for making that water main go across?
Yeah, so what's the
Telegraph
status
Creek.
on that? You're talking about Telegraph Creek Road right there at the water treatment plant. We're working right now with the county's contractor to coordinate our activities with their activities so that we're not in their way. But our staff does have a plan where and how to move our water line. We do have the main water line that feeds the zoo area that runs right through there. We have to basically move it out and put it on its own little bridge. That's what our plan is with power poles. That's what we're going to do. But we don't want to do that if the contractor has to get in there with his equipment. We're trying to coordinate. So right now, I believe the county has received emergency permits to go ahead and do that. Their plan is to rip all of that out, rip out the 3 rotten culverts, and and then install rail car bridges until they can find funding to do their ultimate plan, which is a half culvert, one large half culvert.
So, do we have any idea about how removing those culverts and allowing the water kind of freely flow would affect the generation of fresh water coming out of the dam that's right there?
Well, I'm not sure if we can anticipate. I don't. Obviously, we're not going to be able to pump when they're in there digging around. It's going to become all muddy and stuff. But and I know just upstream they have to remove a bunch of trees because it's going to change the dynamic of the flow. Right. Where there's like a little island with some alders growing on it. The alders will have to be removed because eventually that's going to get scoured away.
Yeah. So will there be any interruption in water service?
No. We'll coordinate with the activities so that we can make sure we can pump.
And then the changing of that line, will that affect water service to the zoo at all? Will there be a period where they don't have water?
Minor intermission until we can rehook it up.
Okay.
It won't be a long duration.
Okay.
A day maybe.
Okay. And will they get notice and everything? Will we make sure that the folks up there know that they won't have water for a day?
Well, no, they will have water.
Oh, they will have
Our
water.
ability
It just
to pump
won't
water.
go up.
We
Okay.
can actually bring water over there from another direction too.
Okay.
Now, but
All right. So that's not the only source of water
it'll
that's
just be a
hot.
minor intermission. So we can pump.
Okay. So there won't be any interruption in the providing water to the folks. Okay. Perfect. That was my concern.
I have to make a comment. This is why you did a phenomenal job replacing Frank on this. And I think that if I had any questions that I wanted to ask, I would ask you, and and then you would get them from Frank and John. And so I'm gonna go back to one of my little things that you and I've talked about more than once. I don't think that we need John and Frank here every meeting that we have, because I'm wasting John's time, which is our money. And I'm wasting Frank's time, when it's our money. And you did such a great presentation. I think that we can handle it without the two of them here, unless we have a specific discussion item where we need them. Like John, when we wanted to ask him if we wanted that property that was donated. So just a suggestion, but I think that you just solidified my answer in my head, that we need to let them do their job.
I agree with Jeff. Yeah, you're doing a great job, Chris. Answering everything. Yeah, I agree.
Question for the waste, for the water department. Is the county fiscally responsible for the replacement of that water main, since it was their failed culverts that are requiring us to do this work?
I did approach the county if they could help out the funding on that, or at least bring us material. They said, no, this is not an emergency project. They have no funding for that. They have no funding to replace our water main.
I mean, didn't they say that it was an emergency project that they're doing?
No, that's not, it's not a FEMA emergency, is I guess what they were trying to get at. So they don't have emergency funding of their own to help out with that. They're just using their normal funds to pay the contractor to do his work.
So putting the temporary fix of the bridge over that they said that they're able to do because they classified it as an emergency isn't the same as classifying it as a FEMA emergency, and so they're not able to get the funding to us. Is that what you're saying?
Oh, I think earlier I said emergency permitting. Yeah, but it's I don't know. I have to look back at this then after that. No, they're helping as far as jumping on it, but they're not able to contribute any funds.
My understanding, Wes, would be more that it's egress. You have to have two forms of egress for emergency. And that's really what that temporary bridge is for, if I might be mistaken. Also, back to certifications of individuals, is that going forward? Because if we don't have certain certifications on certain individuals, there's gonna be a liability issue. So I'm hoping that's moving forward.
Yeah, that is moving. Actually, Travis is right now, for instance, at a backflow prevention testing certification class right now.
Okay, thank you.
Chris, I really don't understand the whole us paying.
Wait. Can you come to him?
I really don't understand the district paying for the water main that was destroyed because of the county's culverts failed. On all the previous jobs that I've been a part of, the county has always provided the pipe work, the fittings, and we, as the district, always said, you guys buy the fittings, the pipe, we will help the contractor make those connections and make those work. I don't think that it was our fault that the water lines broke because of their culverts, and I don't think we should have to pay for it along with all of the labor that's going into having to fix it.
Yeah, you may be thinking of in 2022, the other spots in Telegraph Creek Road. Is that what you're talking?
Yeah.
Those were FEMA grant funded projects, and that's why they were able to buy that material. This time there is no declared emergency, so they
Makes a difference.
yeah. But I can try to get water out of it.
All right. Yeah, well, it's their culvert that made our water line fail.
Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna go back to deferred maintenance.
I'm also kind of a little bit concerned about the fitness trail where their culvert failed and the district had to go in with their labor to secure our sewer line, water line. Is that not county culvert access anything anymore? That's all turned to Greenbelt.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's abandoned by the county.
all right, thank you.
Thanks, Bud.
And just real quick, I agree with Bud. I think that this whole situation could have been mitigated had they been doing culvert maintenance. And so ultimately it should be the responsibility.
It's definitely one of the many culverts in the cove that are failing.
Right.
I've made them aware of a few others recently and putting it on their radar. But yeah, everything is the same vintage, right? It's all put in 1965 or whatnot. So it's all reaching the end of its life at the same time.
So my question would be, because it's deferred maintenance, should we not have a policy or some type of apparatus so that we can address this? Because as they keep failing, back to what Bud was saying, I don't know that it's our responsibility because of deferred maintenance and it's a county issue, not a bridge issue. I think we need to get ahead of that.
Yeah, and especially with the recent passing of Measure O, I'm going to be communicating with our supervisor about road maintenance out here. I do know maybe it's 2023, they did a lot of maintenance on culverts, replacing culverts on Shelter Cove Road. So they are on it. It's just there's 44 miles of roads out here.
I'm addressing more the shrapnel part. I mean, again, when they fail and if we're subjected to it, we need some type of apparatus that's going to really benefit Ridge so that we're not the ones paying for it. So I think that's, again, it's a policy or a position that we need to get ahead of because it's only going to continue.
So who are you working with when you communicate with that stuff, Kristen? Is there stuff that we can do?
And there's some engineers in the Public Works Department.
So when you request the funding, the Public Works Department just says, sorry, we're not going to do it?
Yes.
So is that something that as a board we can approach our representatives, or is there a concerted effort there? Okay. So, all right. As a board, how do we do that?
I'm gonna ask Chris to have you approached Michelle Bushnell about these issues.
I've spoken with her about the roads, but nothing pointed like that. Yeah. She's aware of the roads.
We can draft a letter signed by all.
I'm not talking more roads, I'm
members.
talking more culverts. Yeah. I mean, the culverts and roads go hand in hand, but again, it's the failure is the age limitation on the culverts. Back to my original question is, and I'm gonna go back with Wes, what can we do as this board, as a position statement or something that we can address with our county board of supervisors?
I could draft a letter that you could all sign that we
Okay.
could send to our supervisor.
I would prefer that.
Yes.
It's very similar to what happens if somebody hits our power pole or our fire hydrants. We need to put a very clear, concise invoice of what the cost was to fix it, and then we can bill basically for damages, and then they may or may not pay, and then it would have to go into some sort of claim.
Yeah. The good news about our strategy on Telegraph Creek Road, at least, is that we are going to be using kind of material that we already have, not a lot of purchased material or newly purchased material. So we're going to be able to do it.
I'm gonna say I agree with that on the offset, right? But again, that's our material.
Yeah.
And if we can replace it at something that when we need it somewhere else, we're not paying for it.
Yeah.
Especially when it's not an issue that was caused by red. So I think that, yeah, it's nice to not have the initial impact. However, I don't want to be billed for it either way. And it's not necessarily the material that's costly. Well, it is, but it's really the labor.
We're not afraid of bringing claims against the county either.
What do we got left?
I've done that so many times.
Chris, I have one more thing. Sorry. So is this bridge and the parts being used, is this the final fix?
No.
Or, okay, so we're gonna fix it.
twice.
We've already fixed it once. Now we're gonna put in the
We are going to move our
temporary,
line.
and then we're gonna put in,
Our plan is to move our water line, and that will be the final fix for our water line. Their road plan is to dig all that out, rock line the creek, install the rail car. I think they're gonna do 2 rail car bridges, and then find funding for their ultimate plan, which is the one large half culvert, which they don't have.
and
They have a
then,
plan, but no funding.
and then we'll come in and replace the water line in,
No, our water line repair that we're going to do is meant to be good to last.
permanent.
Yeah.
So the part that you're doing right now, the up above, that's gonna be the permanent. You're not gonna put the water main in the road when they put the new fish culvert in.
I don't think we're gonna need to do that. I can speak to the staff about it later and see if they think we need to do that.
Okay.
Yeah, it's an idea.
Yeah. All right.
Just one last
Yes.
thing on this topic. I do have concerns about using the electrical poles for that, having creosote above the creek. If that's gonna be, if you're looking at, I thought this was gonna be a temporary thing. Now you're saying it's more permanent, so I do have that concern.
Okay.
So at some point, I'll probably be meeting with you about that.
Yeah, so last month was slow call volume wise, so thank you guys for the community for being safe. It was extremely busy on the admin and training side. It was one of our busiest months ever. I've spent most of my time in Garberville, Redway, and Eureka, going to a lot of Measure Z meetings. Yesterday was the hazard mitigation meeting. Before that, we were able to do webinars, so both myself and Chris, even Chief Hargrave, we've been very busy outside influencing our regional area to help benefit our community. You know, we are very isolated. There's about 9 fire districts between us and Fortuna. So if you drive to the groceries, you're going through various different states of fire response. With that being said, that's why you guys came to be here. That is my position. I highly recommend that you all read every position description in the district so you have an idea of what the expectations that are being set on staff are. For Johnny and Frank, they have a very unique expectation compared to Travis and the other guys that are operators. So, also with that being said, I'm here for a reason, and the reason is going back to the history of the board of the fire department. And with Johnny and Frank, there was history of why they're sitting here. It wasn't just because so you guys can talk to them. I would recommend speaking with those guys and seeing why they're sitting there, and if it has any, current implications of what's being said at the board meetings or anything else. So. There's a lot of history that gets locked away in that library that you guys may or may not have access to. I think it's one of the issues that the RIT has long term with board turnover and other things. The fire department is affected, from that as well, of different interactions between board members and staff, and even community members and board members for fire departments, going back years, going back to 4th of July, for example. If you guys may or may not have access to what previous boards discussed on 4th of July going back, it would be very helpful. So I think their current project of digitizing that thing is a huge priority for being able to easily access the history of the RID. As far as the training goes, we're being a lot more influential in our regional training. We trained 28 new volunteer firefighters in our academy. That was a 2-month academy that myself and Chief Hargrave went to Redway 3 days a week. So that was a huge time commitment, but the commitment in the future of our firefighters is extremely important. We recently just finished a 48-person EMS refresher, and that was with 9 different departments that was hosted out here in Shelter Cove, so luckily we didn't have to drive too far. Currently, the biggest project we have coming up is that aren't grant funded is our ambulance. So the ambulance was voted on 3 years ago and then 2 years ago approved. So this has been a 3-year project to get our ambulance updated. So the current ambulance we have right now, we purchased in the 90s. Got it retrofitted in 2013, and it's beyond its useful life. We're having issues with reliability, electronics, and it can't meet the county's ambulance safety standards for a current ambulance. So that process was taken care of. We ended up saving almost $100,000 on a new ambulance if we were to put one in right now by doing it previously and getting that contract signed off by the previous board. So thank you to the community support and the board support on that. That should be done at the end of May. So we're really excited to get that done. One more thing checked off. other than that, it's just our grants, obviously. I'm not trying to drag my feet on the building back there, even though sometimes it feels like it. We're constantly balancing and juggling different funding, different projects. These projects that you guys see are just our capital projects and grants. It's not the everyday project that we're doing. Between myself and Chief Hargrave, we're doing a lot of the fire response labor as well as the admin labor and then capital construction stuff. And that's one of the biggest differences between the fire department and the other utilities is we usually take on a lot of that local stuff. We remodel this building, both inside and outside, and that's something we want to try and do a better job of in the future. Is working and collaborating with RID and basically combining our resources to better support the community. And I think we've done a pretty good job of that, but there's always some roadblocks as far as mainly the organizational structure that we never finished in the RID. That's something that we as a staff and the board need to come back to and finish at some point, and to look at reevaluating that. Our fleet's doing pretty well. The biggest things that we have with our fleet is everything times out eventually. And so a lot of our apparatus that if we want to replace right now, it's a 5-year process, especially the engines. Fortunately, we got the engine replaced in 2021, so that only leaves one of our engines that needs replaced by hopefully 2028. If right now, if we were to put that order in, it's about 400 days out. And that's with a very selective design, basically a stock design. So I don't know if you guys have seen, but basically fire trucks in this country are down to 3 investment companies, and they kind of have a lock on fire trucks. And there's multi-billion dollars of backlogs of communities trying to get fire trucks really at all costs. So our engine that the board purchased for the fire department in, I believe it was 2009. That same engine they've got for just around $325,000. Same quote for that engine is well over $680 now. So that's something with the fire department. We increased our budget in 2018, but not by that much. And so trying to keep up with that. Our current engine is doing very well. However, technology and then just gaskets, plastic, electronics do start wearing out. So no matter how pretty it is on the outside, we still do run into issues where maintenance costs stack up. Currently, the only safety issues we have is our quad 2 we took out of service, so we would like to replace quad 2 at some point, but we do have quad 1 and side by side, so we have redundant systems over those. But fleet's looking pretty good. Staff wise, I just want to shout out to our members that graduated from their academy. So we had 2 firefighters go through a basic structural academy to get that certification. We had 1 firefighter go through a more advanced academy at CR, which is more of a career academy, as a full semester of driving back and forth to CR. And then we have a large one with engineer Josh Ramsey, just got hired by CAL FIRE permanently and promoted. So he went through the full CAL FIRE Company Officers Academy, and that was away from his family for 13 weeks. Really, really intensive. So if you guys see any of those guys out and about, please thank them. They do a lot for this community, and then now they're taking the next step to make a career where they'll be doing it for a living. Hopefully that allows them to stay in our community a lot longer. One of the biggest threats right now to the fire department is people are aging out. And so we get a lot of the kids that are 17 to 20 and they're living with their parents. They can't afford their own house out here. And so that's something that's very difficult for me to fix, the housing issue in Shelter Cove. And so we're looking at creative solutions to that. Right now, one of our solutions is our sleeper program. We have firefighters that can sign up to sleep at the station. Then they can come from other areas. If they move away, they can come back. However, our quarters are not the best. And so that's something we're looking at in the future is that expansion on the fire station. That will be a multi-year, probably multi-million-dollar setup, probably involved with modernizing this entire building at some point. So we'll be coming to the board, hopefully some projections on our long-term plan for that. When it comes to how the board can help the fire department in the future, I think we saw that with the USDA funding get taken away. I know a lot of times Chris and myself try and handle it at our level when it's coming into the politics side, and that's something I think we underutilize our board. When we're talking to representatives, I was talking to senators and congressmen and fighting the federal government for our funding a lot more than I thought I would have to do as a fire chief. Right, that's not something we anticipated, and it worked out at that level. I had them calling me. It was worth my time just to handle the call and do the interviews that I had to interview. Looking back, I think that was something that we could have collaborated quite a bit more to get you guys involved and put the board's name on larger ticket items. When we're talking about $6 million of federal funding, personally, I probably per my position description, I was still in line with that, but I was overstepping a little bit speaking to you, congressmen, and other places where you guys are our political board out here, right? And that's the same thing for Chris. Is I have a really good relationship with Michelle Bushnell. I can go to her for pretty much anything, but I don't want to jump you guys. So in the future, if I reach out to my liaison, Mike, for help on that level, that would be, writing letters and then having you guys be part of those, whatever interaction it is or project. That's going to be really relevant when we start looking at these larger scale federal funding. I'm working with Chris on the FEMA hazard mitigation plan, and that's one that may pay for our water line replacement one day. It may pay for extra tanks, but it's going to take us as a community getting out to those people politically and saying, hey, we need our lines replaced. It's not just Chris and I who are paid to maintain those systems. The board is going to be, active in that and being together as a board and saying, hey, this is our political power in doing that. So right now, off the top of my head, our grants are doing great. If I need any help, I definitely feel that I can go to you guys for help on that. But I think we will, as a community, need that larger scale capital improvement. You guys see our capital improvement costs are really what sets us on the deficit. It's not operational costs. And our capital improvement costs are trucks and infrastructure replacement, water system is our big one. And we're in an earthquake country, so I think there are funding opportunities for that. But it's going to take that larger campaigning, and not very many people like politicking and being politicians, especially right now and how the government is, but it is super important. We want to make up that funding difference. That's what I got in the fire report.
Thanks.
We're good. Public comment on anything? All right. Board, got anything before we move on? No? Okay, then we'll go to action items. Action item number 1. Consider changes to the board meeting schedule.
All right, so this was a discussion topic at the last meeting. As mentioned, recent community interest has expressed a desire for evening board meetings. Conducting board meetings in the evening could enable a larger segment of the population, including those who work during the day, to attend and participate. This topic was brought up last month's meeting, and the board requested it be brought as an action item, so here we are. As a reminder, evening meetings are the norm for most local government agencies. The cities of Fortuna, Eureka, Rio Dell, and McKinleyville CSD all hold their meetings at 6 p.m. Redway CSD holds their board meetings at 5:30 p.m., and Humboldt CSD holds their meetings at 5 p.m. As mentioned at the last meeting, this issue was also raised in the past by the board at the December 2007 meeting. That board at that time decided to hold 3 regular meetings in 2008 during the evening, starting at 6 p.m. For reference, those meetings, one lasted 2 hours, one lasted 4 hours, and one only took about 30 minutes. So, don't know what that entails. And for whatever reason, the board in December 2008 decided to return to the 9 a.m. schedule. One concern brought forth during the discussion of this topic was the potential financial impact for non-exempt or hourly employees that would attend evening meetings. Other municipalities handle this by offering the option of either overtime or compensatory time off, comp time. These options are currently available to confidential employees and other non-union employees not included in the IBEW bargaining unit through our district policy 2010. Staff who fall under the IBEW MOU could only accrue overtime as there is no current comp time arrangement. One alternative for these staff is to discontinue the practice of regularly attending board meetings and only attending if necessary. Instead, the board or the GM can request a written report specific to an action item that concerns their department. In this way, the board and the GM can receive the requested information for the board meeting without staff's attendance, which is what Jeff has been talking about. So financial impacts, yes, potential overtime or comp time costs. Staff recommend, reviewed staff's recommendation. Staff recommends discontinuing attendance by non-exempt hourly staff at the board meetings unless necessary, such as for Jessica, Administrative Superintendent. Staff further recommend that if the board decides to conduct evening meetings, that they start at 5:30 p.m. Staff also recommend a trial period for evening meetings, say 3 months, at the end of which time the board can decide to continue with the evening meetings or return to the 9 a.m. schedule. If this change is desired by the board, staff will bring the item back at the next meeting for a resolution, which is stipulated in policy 5010 board meetings. Includes
Okay. Like I said last month, I mean, I'm on the fence. I could go either way. It doesn't make any difference to me. I just don't know if we're gonna get a better attendance at night. I would be curious to see if that's the case. I heard in the past it has not been the case in the evenings. So I'd be curious to really see how that turns out. But I'd like to hear from the other board members on this topic.
I think we should try it. I think that there's a lot of people that would like to attend, but like Trent, he would have liked to been here today, but he had to go to work. And then sometimes I have to rearrange my day too to make these meetings. But yeah, I think a 3-month trial would be great. I think it would be worth seeing if we do get more people showing up and different segments of our population.
Yeah, I agree. I have to take vacation time to be here. So I would like to see it in the evenings, but I also would like to see what the attendance is like, because I do know, I speak to folks in the community, and of course, what people say versus what they actually do can sometimes be different in terms of whether or not they'd be willing to attend. In terms of the financial impact, if we assume, as right now we usually have 3-hour meetings, if we assume 3 hours of overtime, do we have an idea of how much that would cost us for that 3 hours once a month?
I have to sit down and do some math.
I mean, like, is a lot like $200 or $10,000? I mean, what's a lot?
I do the math in my head. Probably less than 300.
No, I mean, I would say it's more than that, for
You
sure.
think so?
Yeah, because it's not just the hourly rate that I cost the district, it costs their benefits as well,
Right.
and their insurance and everything.
Oh.
So, at the cost of a charge out rate, I'd have to double check and see what it actually costs per hour. But I could say if we're talking time and a half, I could say it would easily be $400 or $500 a month.
Is that just you? Does that include John's time as well?
That would be
Right.
Not included,
Right. So that means that we would have to pay John time and a half. He couldn't take the comp time option, if I'm reading this correctly. And then is Frank exempt?
No, Frank's IBW.
Oh, Frank is also IBW. Okay, yeah, so we would have to pay both of them. So there would be 3 folks that we would have to pay overtime. You're exempt. And then Chief, you're exempt as well, I assume.
I have hourly deferred, so I would take basically a vacation hour per hour for my.
Okay, so you would take a comp time option? Okay, so well, financially, that wouldn't necessarily impact us. We would just, have a fire while you were on that comp time.
Well, yeah, we have to have it covered off. Yeah.
Right. I'm not concerned about that. I assume he's going to lose it. But for the rest of you, just kidding, Chief. Please take your vacation time. I'll work on that.
Going on vacation.
Chris's recommendation was that Frank and John would come in. I have no issues with it. I think that there's a number of factors that I don't think the attendance is going to increase. It's people come when it's an issue that involves them. I think that I could see doing like 3, maybe 4 a year and still do 1 month in the morning, 1 month, next month is at night or thereabouts. I think the other issue is summer. When vacations start coming, people aren't in the Cove as much. They have different plans. Or again, back to what's the topic at hand. I think that I'd like to see a mixture to see the difference. More of a trial basis though, because I really don't think that we're gonna have any more people at night than we are in the day, in the morning.
I think alternating is a bad idea. Just because I don't think people would be able to maintain. I know I would look at the calendar and be like, am I supposed to be there tomorrow morning or am I supposed to be there tomorrow night? What did we do last month? How does this work? Like, I know that's, yeah. So I don't know if alternating is a good call, especially for folks in the public. they have people showing up here in the morning or in the evenings when it's not a meeting. I think being consistent for a period of time is good. I mean, maybe it's a seasonal shift, like you were saying, but yeah.
Yeah, I believe our current board time really, I think in the past, because we didn't have the ability to have online viewing and attendance, that could be, we were a little bit more restrictive in our access to the public, but I think the board does and the district does a good job now, and we're only getting better with that technology. As a board member, I feel like personally, I'm better earlier in the day than rather in the evening. And we will be having some more, as far as like the budget and whatnot. For attention to detail is really important, that we're energy wise, that we're able to do our job to its fullest. And also, I think that by changing it to the evening, we will be, after reaching out to staff, particularly in the office, that it will have a negative impact on how staff is operating. Again, it's later in the day. They can take like a 2-hour break, but again, it breaks up their time, and I don't think that's going to be beneficial. I also, from the past experience, and I know this was many years ago, I think initially we saw an increase of attendance initially, and then it quickly died down due to the fact that that time in the evening is the kids are getting home from school, it's dinner time. There's always a reason why people cannot attend these meetings. And although it is important to have the public here, ultimately these meetings are for the board to discuss and deal with issues. And I think that we should be at the top of our game on that. And personally, I do better earlier in the day than in the evening. I also think that we could be potentially alienating the maybe not the whole retirement community, but I mean, I served on the Pioneer Board for many years, and we held our meetings in the evening, and attendance just was never really that great because and they kept saying it's in the evening, can you have it during the day? And so, or on the weekend. But I do think this will be negatively impact staff time. I think that if the board does decide to go in this direction, that it should be a temporary basis.
Well, I have an interesting comment too, because isn't the Sports Action Committee going to meet a few times a night?
Yes, we will be having a couple town halls, I believe, but for the most part, the regularly scheduled is in the morning.
Yeah, again, back to your town halls, it'd be interesting even on that, how many more people attend your meetings as well. Again, I agree with both sides. I think that you kind of want to give the community time to come in at night, but you also want them to, we being consistent, as Wes says. So maybe it is seasonal. Maybe we hold 3 meetings in the first part of the year that are at night, and then the rest in the morning, or vice versa. Maybe we do 3 in the beginning of the year and 3 at the end of the year, back to because of the time change or whatever. But I think that the biggest one of the biggest issues goes back to family and dinner and school. And so I think that and staff, I think you guys work a long, hard day, and then all of a sudden you're going to be coming to our meetings for another 3 to 4 hours. So, back to in the morning, I can see both sides.
So in terms of the impact on staff, we have staff's recommendation. So
Yes.
did that recommendation that we shift to the 5:30 p.m., that assumes that staff has put their input, or no?
I disagree with the recommendation, but it is my own personal feelings. Me personally, I am same as Tasha. I'm a morning person, and if I'm here taking the record, I would definitely feel better doing that during the daytime than I would in the evening. And it is a very long day. These meetings, originally you guys were discussing 6 o'clock, and these meetings are 3 to 4 hours. We're getting out at 9, 10 p.m. I go to bed at 9. I don't wanna be up that late, but this isn't all about me, obviously. So I really would like to hear what the people who are regular attending these meetings have to say. I want to hear what you guys want.
I agree.
I agree. I'm not coming at night.
You sure? I'll pick you up, bud. I'll pick you up.
I'm with Bud.
Mr. Reed.
I have a thing called wine time at 5 p.m. I think that I would have been a great fire department volunteer, but I drink. So I like myself when I drink. I'll be online. You might not like me when I drink.
We need volunteers before 5 too, Arlen.
What?
Just real quick, I would like to add that was part, although it's not in the record, that was one of the issues is back in the day is we were having people showing up after their drink time. And that also contributed to the meetings lasting longer.
Yeah.
Okay. Could you start the meeting at like a 4 o'clock hour? Yeah, okay, so there's a little bit of flexibility, so it doesn't have to be 5 or 5:30.
Or good morning still. Yeah, actually, honestly, I know in my tenure on the board, we never switched, and it was always on that historic time of they've tried it in the past, it didn't work out, that kind of thing. Honestly, I know personally, I will try to be in attendance. I myself is, just after years of coffee shop and produce manager, I'm a morning person as well. I'm, like Jessica, I'm probably in bed by 9 o'clock unless there's a call. And so, but that being said, I mean, it is up to the board. There is plenty, I hear consistently from the community that people are wanting more of an evening meeting. But again, as Wes said, and I've heard it in a lot of my trainings and stuff, I don't believe until the butts walk in and sit down. There's plenty of stuff that people say they're going to do, but until, you actually give them the option and they do it, So I think a trial run wouldn't be ill-advised to see how it goes, see if your attendance, really changes. But I understand with you guys. I can see it from both sides. It's a hard one. You've got other people who are at their best in the evening time and, do their best work at midnight. So, it's kind of, yeah. So I don't envy you guys your job.
Thanks, Jack.
Thanks, Jack.
Yeah, I guess from my point of view, I've just always seen like the board as like serving the people. So that would be my point of view. I do think we should try something different. We signed up for the board. We're volunteering to do this. So if it's something, if a time, that's something to think about. We volunteered to do this position. So honestly, I think, trying something different and seeing if we have more input from the community. And if it doesn't work out, then that's fine. But, at least we do have to acknowledge that the community here is changing. People have 9-to-5 jobs. And I have heard people say that they wish they could come to the meetings, but they can't because they have to be at work. And like I said, I do have to rearrange my day for this meeting. So
I'm curious for folks with kids, if we were to change it to like a 4, would that be easier or harder? Because is that like the period when you're picking up your children, or would it make it easier if we were to like from 4 to 7 as opposed to 6 to 9? What would be? I mean, I know neither one is really convenient, but again, not having children, I don't know what the schedule is there, how that would work out.
I mean, for me, 4 o'clock would be okay because that's like when Whale Gulch, the school bus comes and they drop off right here. So, my daughter could be with all the other kids playing on the playground, which is really nice. And then, I guess Trent would be in charge dinner, or I don't know, maybe
Yeah.
they'd go
Right,
down to
I
the
mean, like,
brewery
that's
or eat
unfortunately what
once.
you have to do, right? Like,
Yeah.
that's, yeah.
Yeah, but like honestly, I will say like mornings are a little bit harder because for sure Trent has to work, so I always have to find some sort of like arrangement for Petra. Where like 4 o'clock for me, it'd be like, oh, okay, she can just go play after school, or I don't know. That's what I'm thinking. Like, and actually, there would be a lot of parents here around that hour picking up their kids once the bus gets going again, how it was last year. But there will be a lot of parents here, so.
So,
At that time.
of the people that are here today, can I see a show of hands who would attend a 5 o'clock RID meeting? 3, 4 of 10.
I have another, I'm sorry, but, yeah, what you're saying that you are volunteering for this.
Mm-hmm.
So this last time, there was 3 members appointed because nobody wanted to do it. So do you think it would be a positive thing for you to change the time when it was that you couldn't get the people on there? Would it be at 9 o'clock, or do you think that would have more chances for people to join?
I don't know. I can't answer that question. I mean, there might be people who would have wanted to join the board. I can't answer that question. But I just wanted to remind the board that we did volunteer for this, and that part of being on a board is taking, input from the community and distilling it and then making decisions based on that input. Yeah, yeah. So I don't know though, but that's the thing. We also have to be like open to change and trying different things. And if it doesn't work, like it said, it's a 3-month thing, so it's not permanent. It would
I would
just
like
be.
to see more support. I mean, more people wanting to do volunteer.
And I do agree. Yeah, I know.
I'm gonna say that no matter what, I have to change my schedule. It's irrelevant to me whether it's the morning or night. I happen to do heavy construction, so I'm gonna be beat to death at night. And I'm gonna go back to like Bud. I'm in bed by 8:30, 9 o'clock. If I make it that late, I'm doing pretty damn good. So for me, I'm losing work right now. But back to what you said, I volunteered for this, so I arranged my schedule, and I'm missing valuable daylight. But at the same time, I'm an old man doing heavy construction. So for me, no matter what, it's gonna impact me, no matter what I do. Now, then I'm gonna go back to what Tristan just said, giving it a shot to see if we get more people. I'm game for it. However, I'm gonna say based on the years that I've been coming here, and I think Arlen could probably even say it better than I could, that it all depends on the topic and how it affects an individual. If it's important for the community, they show up. It doesn't matter if it's 9 o'clock, and it doesn't matter if it's 5 o'clock. It's about the issue. So I think it's what's going to be most productive for RID, and it's an issue-based topic. So again, today we've had 11 people show up. Dave Summers, when I first sat in here, he said, I count how many people show up every time. I'm lucky if I get 15. So show of hands, we're going to lose half of our people that are regulars that come every single time. These are the people that are the ones that are willing to take the time and show up and have the input for our community. So I'm going to say I have a quandary. I would do it more just for an experiment, but I don't think it's going to change anything. So I'll give the experiment, but after that 3 months, I'll tell you, if it doesn't make a substantial change, I'm going to vote for going back to the morning.
Okay. Miss?
Hi, Cousin Knight. Is this on?
No. There you
My
go.
name is Cousin Knight. I've been a resident since the year 2000. Been coming to these meetings since I was 25. I'm 42. I can't do that. I have a lot of conflicting comments and no answers. As a young single woman with no kids that works, I've always wanted an evening meeting. I'm very surprised that in the notes it doesn't say that they stopped having the meetings because people would come lubricated on alcohol and it created a little feistiness. if you have the meeting at 5:30, it's gonna take someone from over the hill 45 minutes if they drive swiftly to get back to the house. They gotta wash up, have a little snack. By that time, they're probably about 45 minutes late for the meeting. Why come at all? I do support 4 o'clock. I think that's a great in-between time, but then again, I don't have kids and people still aren't off work. So you're not really fixing that problem. I drove from Santa Cruz County yesterday to make this meeting by 9 o'clock. I have to take 3 days off to come to these meetings, which is why I haven't been here for the last year, because I've been living in Santa Cruz County to pay my mortgage because I can't afford to live here anymore. So I like to come to these meetings at whatever time, because I make it a priority, because it's really important to me to be here for things. Jesse, last month on the beach, said, Tessa, you need to come to the next meeting. And so I looked into it and I thought it would be wise. But I think people just have to make it a priority.
Thank you. All right. We got one more, Laura?
One more. I just wanted to, I will say if I had my pioneers meeting at 9 a.m., nobody would show up. And that's just because I think the regulars that are here can make it flexible in their schedule. But I think people that do want to come, they're not able to make their schedule flexible. And I think we also need to think about those people. And it doesn't mean they're all going to come and inebriated. I think that's a really unfair statement about this community. So I would say even at 3 p.m. A lot of people here do get off between 3 and 4 p.m. Anytime that's not, I think 9 a.m. is just really, really hard for everybody, whether they have kids or jobs. It's even hard for us. I mean, we can do it because we make our schedule flexible, but I think a lot of this community can't make their schedule flexible. So I would vote to either try it for 3 months or do what we're trying to do with Parks and Rec and do a town hall once a quarter. So then people are able to come and attend at least once a quarter to give their voice because they can't be heard here. And yeah, go-to meeting's great, Zoom is great, but if you're still working 9 to 5, can you be on a Zoom or a go-to meeting for 3-4 hours? No, you can't. It's not possible. So all you can do is watch the recording and your voice still doesn't get heard. So I really hope you guys consider changing the evening.
Thank you.
I'm gonna say that on that note, I kind of like the quarterly. I think that, I know Wes was saying that back to not knowing it, but I'm gonna say back to the topic related, but again, giving a voice, it at least once a quarter, another approach that we can meet it in the evening meeting, that seems a little bit more, allowable from some people. But again, another good point was about driving over the mountain. Again, when this meeting's over, if it starts at 4 o'clock and it's a 4-hour meeting, we're talking 8 o'clock. Cool in the summer. In the winter, I'm not there for you. It's dark. I don't want to be driving. I guess I'm getting older again. But that would be my input.
I myself, I kind of think it just needs to stay the way it is, personally. But majority rules up here. So let's voice our opinions on what our thoughts are, and see if we want to make a motion and change these times.
I'd like to make a motion to consider changes to the board meeting schedule. I don't have a time in mind, but this would just be to bring it up for the next meeting, right? And
No, this is to
No.
do it so that.
okay,
So-
I'm gonna do the staff recommendation. So I'd like to make a motion to consider changing the board schedule meeting to 5:30 for a 3-month period. And then we'll come back and revisit and see how it went
Is your motion to consider doing that or to do that?
to do that.
It would be to do that. This is an action item.
Right.
Anyone want to second that?
When did that come
Next month. So let's see here, April, May, June.
Point of order or clarification. Does it have to be brought back first for the resolution?
Yeah.
So it
Yeah.
actually have to be starting in May?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Okay, I'll second that motion.
Roll call.
Jeff Hilden.
Yeah.
I'm thinking, it, I'm in a quandary because I kind of agree that I like it the way it is. I think that no matter what, we're making a commitment, and I think it's an issue-based situation. It's not the attendance. As this motion stands, if it were done quarterly, I would consider it differently, so nay.
Kristen Sanders? Aye. Bud Valheim?
Aye.
Josh Machine?
No.
Mike Solari?
No. Motion does not carry.
So,
You guys want to discuss more?
yeah, let's discuss it a little bit more. Yeah, interesting.
I guess my one thing is I do have to leave at 12, so.
I
But.
keep watching the clock for you, I'm conscious of it.
Okay, well, I'm just gonna.
I think the motion didn't carry, maybe more discussion needs to be taken up about this, so why don't we just table this?
Yeah.
And add it to next month, we'll discuss it again next month, and see if other people can be convinced. And then just move on.
If we could, yeah, maybe get some more input from the community.
I would love to have more. I would love to have more.
Because, I mean,
Jack, you got some input, sir?
Naturally, all the folks that are here are going to say, well, yeah, I want to still be here. So it's not really a valid measure.
Yeah.
I was just gonna suggest, if obviously, there's a lot of indecision and conflict, maybe try reaching out to the public, in the next billing cycle or something where you guys could actually get some feedback from the public, from more than the dozen folks that are actually in attendance, to see the people who can't make it, who may be able to make it, or the people who do come in the morning who are like, no, absolutely, I won't make it in the evening time. So that way you can get a broader spectrum.
Yeah.
I agree. We need more public input.
And I do go out, and when these topics come up, I do talk to friends and neighbors and people I run across on the streets and ask what their feedback is and input. So this has been a topic for discussion, I think, I've been on the board a year and a half, so it's always been something that has come up. But I think changing it personally, and from what I've gotten some feedback from the public, is that by pushing it off to the evening time, you're creating more of a problem than you are a solution, personally. But we can table it and find out more. Do we have more public comments?
I actually have to go because I have to go work, so I can't stay for the rest of the things that I really want to be here for, but I'll get on go to meeting. I would suggest doing a Facebook poll, and see what people's take is on that. I think that would be a really good idea.
That's not a bad idea.
Just put it on the community groups.
Is that something we can do?
That is the pioneers, because I feel like then that's like.
Pioneers, but just get you on do the poll.
Oh, so I already
It's
do
really
like.
easy, just when you go to do a regular post, there's a poll button, and you just click on that, and then you put in the topics or the times and the dates or whatever it is, and then go poll.
Okay.
Yeah, and then offer a multi-tiered approach, because not everybody's on Facebook, but yes, I was gonna suggest a Facebook poll, and then also on the portion of the bill that we can tear off, we can write on there a little
I would like
extra,
that better.
and we can put it on that as
Okay.
well.
And then I won't be able to be here for unfinished business, which is something I did want to bring up immediately, for the next meeting. The pioneers would like to request a dumpster or trash receptacle at the community center, because we have to take away the trash every time, and it smells like alcohol in our cars, and that really stinks, literally and figuratively. Or we have to coordinate a volunteer member to truck.
That's expensive.
I know it's expensive, but it is an ongoing issue.
So let's have a discussion item
Just
on
wanted to
that.
bring that up maybe for next meeting.
Next meeting, let's have a discussion item on that.
Okay, we can do that. We got any more public comment? No? Okay. All right, we gotta get moving here. So you've got the directions? You good? Okay. All right, so let's move on to action item number 2. Consider update ordinance number 72, administrative rate schedule for connection fees. Chris?
Okay, yes, so this was also a discussion item at the last board meeting, now back for action. As presented at last month's meeting, RID water and wastewater connection fees are higher than other regional municipalities. And I've displayed that. Let me go ahead and share my screen. Okay. So this is a, graph of our just water and wastewater capacity charges and connection fees, and it shows that we are pretty high for the regional average here for those municipalities that are listed. Rio Del does not have connection charges as part of their connection fees. They contract to a third party for that. So the board was also presented with a detailed history of RID utility connections from the past 30 years, including the number and type of connections per year and the total cost of those connections. And I displayed that in this graph. You can see that there we go. So, as mentioned at the previous meeting, the average number of connections per year before the housing boom of the mid-2000s, which is the tall blue bars there, that's the housing boom. The average number of connections before that was about 10 per year. Since the housing crash of 2008 and the simultaneous increase in connection fees, which is the green line, that number has dropped to about 4 per year on average. In 2014, the board counteracted that decrease by lowering the connection fees, which is the small drop on the green line right there. And but the effect was negligible and short-lived. You can see there was a slight spike in the blue bar, but it kind of tapered off. So the subject of today's action item is for the board to again consider the utility connection fees and consider adjusting them through an update of ordinance number 72. As also mentioned in the previous meeting, when the board reduced the fees in 2014 as part of the motion, they mentioned reviewing the capacity charges every 2 years and adjusting installation fees each year based on the consumer price index. And that has not occurred, possibly because of staff and board turnover since 2014. But we can revisit that too. Current staff recommend that the board consider reducing the current capacity charges to encourage acceptable and moderate growth, which will in turn increase district revenue. At last month's meeting, staff suggested $5,000 per utility instead of the current $9,000 charge. This would reduce total connection fees by $12,000 if you were getting all three, bringing the total cost to $21,950 instead of the current $33,950. So if this amount roughly equals what total connection fees would cost if multiplying the connection fee from, this should say fiscal year 2002, 2003, 12,280, which was what the connection fees were then, by the inflation rate since then, which is, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, 1.75 times, it brings it to 21,490, which is roughly where I'm saying put it. Staff do not have a specific recommendation for the installation fees part of ordinance number 72. Options are to leave them at the existing level, change them to a time and materials cost basis, increase them based on the CPI, or something else. But if you refer back to the chart, which was here, we are, not that chart. Oh, well, it's the graph. It's part of this chart. So our installation fees are roughly on average, or just slightly below average other regional municipalities. So I don't have a good recommendation for what to do with them. I also wanted to show you this chart, which is the total district utility connection revenue since 2019. You can see we were doing pretty well in 2019 with those 7 connections, and then since then it's really tapered off.
Do we have that chart?
I did this after the board passed it, so I can give it to you. But it is definitely on a downward trend, so we're trying to do something different. So financial impact, potential loss of revenue if the RID opts to lower total connection fees and the number of connections remains the same, or a potential increase in revenue if the RD opts to lower connection fees and the number of connections increases. We don't really have a control over whether or not someone wants to build here. The only control, I guess, would be fees and permits, right? So we have control over these fees. And so,
Interesting. I don't know if it would make much of a difference to lower the fees, but I mean, if it's a matter of fairness, I mean, if we changed to actual cost plus a percentage, because I'm sure some installations will take longer, more materials and things like that. So there is a variance there to not basically overcharge someone because it's an easy hookup. I'd be okay with that, but we do need to add a markup on that, just like any contractor would. But anybody else have any input on this?
I do.
This is a tough one.
Go Les.
So does the 21,950, does that cover our costs? For the installation, is there, I mean, where does that fit in terms of our costs? Does that cover the cost for some of them, most of them, all but a couple of outliers? How does that?
I would really have to go back and do some research on that one. Some of them are probably fairly easy, like it's just the amount of putting a meter in an existing box. Other ones involve a lot of excavation. There's a separate charge for when an electric connection needs power poles, for instance. It's not part of this ordinance. And what I'm talking about is only the capacity charge, which is the buy-in fee. The installation charge, I'd have to do some research to find out if that is adequate. I think a good idea, though, is to keep it the same, so it's fair for, for kind of like how the USDA grant has been working, where the treatment contract is, even though some homes are very easy to clear around, other ones are very difficult, it's all balanced out so that the cost is.
Sure. Yeah, I agree.
So this is a conversation I've had with a number of people, including you, Chris, because I really like the idea and I would love to have this topic as further discussion item, not based on this. I think that, is it gonna matter? Yeah, I think that if we lowered it a little bit, is it gonna help? I don't know, it's really expensive to build. I'm building, so I think it's very expensive to build. I think that I would like to see personally that we do hookups before you need a permit, meaning that we charge for a hookup, we get our connection fees, we get our hookups. They're not allowed to use the power, they're not allowed to use the water, but we get our base rate every month. If anything, it would give an incentive so that they build sooner. It's now a piece of dirt is a liability. The moment that you have water or utility hookups, it's now an asset. So it's either gonna put a fire under the developer or the home builders to get their permits and start the building process. And if it takes them 5 years, I don't know that we care, other than the fact that we're gonna get $55, whatever, for water every month until they get permits. They're not allowed to use it. They're allowed to pay for the hookup. There's only 300 hookups for X number of lots here. So it's incentivizing people to go out and get their hookups and make their lots valuable. Now, again, are they gonna build on it? I don't know, but if they're gonna get water hookups, they're definitely gonna be thinking they're gonna build on it. And that way we receive the funds prior to the county receiving their funds for the permit.
That would require a different ordinance.
Completely. I would like to bring that back as a discussion item next month on that issue. This being said, I guess my biggest thing is a builder, how's it gonna really impact by lowering it or leaving it the same? I think that if you're gonna build, is this gonna incentivize you to build sooner because we're lowering the hookup price? I think that before you put a shovel in the ground, it's almost $40,000 to $70,000. So is it this hookup because it's gonna save you a couple thousand? Yeah, I mean, me personally as a builder, I'd love to see it lowered. You know, is it gonna impact my community? Is it gonna hurt RID? I don't know. I'm gonna go back to the incentive of doing it. You know, so I think that they go hand in hand. I'm gonna say I think that on a historical standpoint, 4 is what you're looking for. And I think on a historical standpoint, when the economy looks like it is today, you're not gonna get as many builders. So how many new homes are going, how many new permits, new construction permits do we have right now?
We had one this fiscal year.
I mean, to your point, Jeff, I would say that like is all the more reason that we do need to start messing and like lowering some of our fee permits, because that's the only thing we can do is incentivize people to build here is by lowering the fees, you know, and like you said, before the shovel even gets in the ground, if you have to pay those fees.
That's why I'm saying get it first.
Well, I mean, yeah, and that's like a different thing, and I do think that's an interesting idea, and I do like that. But the only thing we can do, you see that governments do this all the time. You know, California, they want to bring back filming. You know, they're doing tax credits, so it's like this is really one of the only tools we have to expand our tax base, also our service base, so that we get more revenue. Otherwise, if we're always going to be stuck with the same set of customers, I mean, this is something we have to think about with our deficit and all these things. So this is a number that we can play with, I think it's a great idea, having built homes in the past, these costs do add up and they do make you think like, is this like even worth doing? So it's like, if it's just like more manageable, you might get more people. And I mean, I don't know. I just think I'm really for it, honestly, because I don't know what we really have to lose. We don't have any fees right now. And I mean, as long as we're covering our costs, right, with like what is it? Yeah, at least we're covering our costs, and then whatever the installation, what do you do? Time and supplies, or whatever that phrase is called. I mean, I don't see why we wouldn't want to move forward with it, especially since it's just going to expand our base. We'll have more people. Hopefully, more people will be burning power, and then we do have to grow. We do need to grow. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't believe our hookup fees are exorbitant at all for what we provide out here. I think that it would actually potentially, by lowering the cost of our fees, the district doesn't have a lot of control over the building out here right now. I think that decline that you're showing, we were doing pretty good in 2019. Then we've had a myriad of things happening with COVID and the shutdown. And now we're looking at the economy. With that said, we have hundreds of homes out here that have bought into the system. And, in other places, although we're maybe a little bit higher, we're not that much higher. And especially when it comes to power, we have our generators, and they don't have that in other places. We're also at the cost of doing business out here is more for us being at the end of the line and having to be more self-reliant. I think that, again, the cost of building is just going up, and that's not really on the district. Our cost of doing business is going to be going up. So it doesn't make sense to me to lower the connection fees at this point. Maybe it might help more people come in, but I personally don't believe that to be the case. I think it takes a special type of person to live out here full time. So I don't think it's fiscally responsible to lower the connection costs. I think that as we move forward in the strategic plan, we get to the electrical department looking at solar on ways of reducing, specifically getting RID on solar so that the community at large isn't paying for all of the use that RID uses. What else? Yeah, I think that we're pretty fair for where we're at, and we're one of the most affordable places left on the coast.
I would like to add something.
And so, yeah.
I would like to add something. Chris, I think that.
Hold on. Alicia, were you finished? Please
I thought you were done, I'm sorry.
Oh,
Please finish.
it's all right. Yeah, I don't think it's fiscal responsibility.
So,
Reducing-
You were saying that it's good for, it's one of the cheapest places in California.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, and we have a finite amount of resources out here. And then I do have a question for you, and especially with the water. That's a finite resource for us. And I am curious, was the water board ever notified about that well site across the street from my place in the pole yard that was filled up, that helped, that it's my understanding that well site contributed to the amount of water connections that we could have. And then for some unknown, I don't know that it's been publicly stated, but for some unknown reason, we district staff years ago filled that up with concrete, and I'm not sure if the water board was ever notified of that.
Yeah, actually on the drinking water watch website, the pole yard well is listed as deactivated.
Okay.
Destroyed, that's the word they use. And
we haven't received any word if that
we have not
has
received
affected
any
our.
word. In fact, and then water boards came out in 2022 to inspect our drinking water system, and they cited a 1997 amendment to our permit, which has allowed up to 990 service connections. And they said that permit should be reviewed again, or that amendment to the permit should be reviewed again because we have had new wells since 1997. Pole yard well did exist back then,
Okay.
but none of the other wells did.
Yeah.
And we've added a lot more water capacity.
So we will be looking at that again, and yeah, I think they should be notified of that well no longer being operative.
Okay, so we need to figure out what we're doing here. This,
My question.
oh, I'm sorry, that's right, you go ahead, Jeff.
If we were to approve staff's recommendation, again, this is something the staff has recommended. And if it were approved by the board, could we come back at a later date and review this again if it doesn't do what staff's recommending that it might do?
Yes.
Right, so again, I have no issues following staff's recommendation. That's what we hired Chris for. So I could say that I would like to see that if it does what it's supposed to do, I don't know that it would hurt us, because based on what your numbers are, it doesn't look like it's gonna have that big of a financial impact.
Except that we could have potentially have new customers and.
In terms of a tail, you mean?
We could add into that we do an annual review. The board does an annual review of that.
I can see that.
I'm kind of on the fence about this. I don't think it generate more customers. I really don't. But it may. So I'm on the fence about it. So it is an action item. So if you guys want to make a motion, we can see. Oh, public comment. I'm sorry. Thank you, Tish, for my public comment reminder.
Well, did you have something you want to say?
Public comment?
I do have just one thing I wanted to add really quick. Jeff, and I know this might come up at the next meeting, and not necessarily what the action item is today. But as far as providing water hookups without building permits, I think from a district liability standpoint that would not be beneficial, because then there's no incentive for the people to continue with the county building permit process. Hold on. And
I asked for it to be a discussion item next time, so we can address that then.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So we had 64 houses built in 07. And we changed our rate from 12,280 up to 37,400 we instantly dropped down to 7 builds. 7 builds, 3, 5, 4, 3, 1 in the next 7 years. And we dropped the next rate from the 37 down to 33, and we instantly got 10. And that slowly started dropping 6, 5, 5, 1. But that was in 2020, COVID hits, we jumped back up. So this is the first time that we're comparable to, this new construction is comparable to buying an existing place right now. It's at $320 a square foot for home sales right now. And I could build a house for $350 a square foot. So for me, this is the time to actually grab the market and anything that you can do to drop the prices. Because I'll tell you right now, if I'm not anywhere close to the power, if there's no power line, I am going to convince those people that I'm building for to put solar on and bypass the whole thing. Because why? For another $5,000, for electrical at $12,000, I can put in a $15,000 system to run a 1-bedroom house. So if you can convince me to convince my clients to hook up, then that's a positive. And then about the hookups for the sewer, no matter what, that should be more than the hookups for water. I don't care whether it's easier or anything, but in anybody's mind, sewer is way worse than water. Thanks.
Thank you, Ryan. I don't know, I'm kind of on the fence about this. Well, we have another public comment. Jack.
Hello. Actually, I'm going to try and keep my opinion out of it and just give you a historical kind of perspective. I know in 2007, 2008, when this issue came up, the board was considering the possibility at that point we're at historic growth levels. And so we were really staring that 990 capacity in the face, had not developed the wells at that point. So it was kind of in response to that the board did elevate the capacity charges. I was at that meeting. I actually was going up that day to sign papers on buying our first property out here, and I spoke against the ordinance at that point because I just told them, I'm like, you're now making it more expensive today to hook up my property than I'm going to pay for my property today. So at that point, I was really against it. I've since been on the board and seen the other side of it. So I do understand. Just a couple things to point out. The chart that you used, Chris, I'd just like to point out that all but one of those areas, McKinleyville, are incorporated areas. So they have other means as far as city taxes and stuff like that to recoup costs and such, which we do not have. McKinleyville is the outlier on there. They're not incorporated as of yet. And so I do know that we have increased our water capacity a lot since then. We have developed, when Philip was here, we developed a lot of those wells and everything. So I know those could come into into the mix as far as water capacity. We've also shed the possibility of the lawsuit over what NOAA had us on for Telegraph Creek over the fish ladder and everything else. There was a possibility of rebuilding and all questions of the dam at that point. But that was quickly alleviated as soon as Philip came in. So that's no longer in the concept. I just would like to point out, I'm not saying I agree or disagree with them, by reducing the capacity charges by $4,000, you're looking about 6 years in the monthly capacity charges to recoup that, just by doing the math. Not saying I'm for or against, but that's kind of where you're at. Even if somebody is paying a monthly capacity charge before use, you are looking at 6 years to recoup that $4,000 currently. Whether or not that'll increase or decrease the amount of hookups, I don't know. I hear you. That 2007, 2008, I also, as you know, coincided with the market crash on housing and everything else. So I know in part of it, it was unfortunate timing as far as what you see in that numbers. They were definitely skewed by all of that. So there you go. I just kind of wanted to give you that historic perspective on it. So,
Thanks, Jack.
yeah, absolutely.
Jessica.
I would just like to add one thing that was mentioned to me. I can't say that I know whether it's true or not, but, I was told that the capacity charges, were raised to take into consideration the amount of connections that we have to maintain here. We have a large amount of connections that are not being utilized, but we still have to maintain them. So that's why, one of the reasons I was told the capacity charges are so high.
So it would behoove us to have more customers. And then also to speak to what Arlen was saying, that is another thing. We do kind of want to get ahead of the solar power because I feel like very soon it is going to come that, I was just talking to Trent and I guess all these solar panels are being taken off in Southern California because now you can get the next size up. So they're like giving them away for like $10. You can get panels like the, anyways, he knows more about it. But what I was going to say is, right now would be the time to encourage people to pay for their hookups and start building in the cove. Whereas like maybe 5 years from now, can they just opt into the sewer and then not be, is that an option if they just wanted to like pay in for the sewer installation? Or is it like the sewer and the electrical come together? Or you pay for
I'd
them?
have to review those ordinances.
Yeah, because I would just be curious if like in 5 years from now, like no one's going to want to hook up to our electricity system because they'll just have their solar panels. And so, and right now at $33,950, that is like if people don't want to build because of that price, like then they'll probably definitely want to avoid, or they would want to put panels because they don't want to pay into the system. Anyways, what I guess I'm saying is that just for me, like, being part of like the building community and, I see us trying to make incentives to get people to build here so that we can increase our services. We can still maintain everything that RID is, does. And then also have like new paying customers. I think like losing $10,000 now is nothing to like what you will get from a customer over like 20, 30, 40, 50 years, and I think that's like a thing that, we have a hard time seeing sometimes is like the short term. Oh, okay, we're going to lose 10,000 here. But then it's like, but over like the long term, that's when you really start to get back the benefits. And we can always revisit this, I guess just coming from the building community, I just see like that is a price tag that before you even like, yes, get your shovels in the ground, that's like that could stop someone's project, And I really do think that the Cove attracts like a certain kind of person, maybe like down in the lower Cove, they could afford more, but I think like also, it offers this dream of living on the coast and like, you don't have to be a millionaire and, like all these little fees add up and like, that's kind of a little bit of our clientele too. So that's
So where are we at on this? I was saying this is an action item.
Yes.
Do we want to take action on this?
Yes.
I myself don't think we should change anything, but if you guys want to make a motion, we can do that and vote on it.
Okay. I'll make a motion okay, let's see here. What is my motion? The recommendation? Consider.
You don't want to consider it, you want to make the change.
Change.
Right, so you don't want to consider changing it. You want to actually make the motion to do the change.
Okay, I want to make a motion to change the ordinance number 72, the administrative rate schedule for connection fees to what staff recommended, the $21,950 with a yearly review.
I'll second that motion.
Roll call.
Sheen,
No.
Mike Solori,
No.
Kristen Sanders,
Yes.
Jeff Hildreth,
Yes.
Beth Bonheim.
So to clarify, the motion is doing the staff suggested 5,000 per utility instead of the 9,000 charge, correct?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yes.
Motion carries.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, we're good.
So, I guess just a little bit of follow-up is that the commission ordinance will be 2 months review process.
Okay.
All right, moving on. Action item number 3. Consider adjustments to ordinance number 71, administrative rate schedule for electric usage.
Okay, so this was, mentioned, it's been mentioned in the past, and finally talking about it here. So the board updated this ordinance, in December 2019, and then again in April 2023. For the 2019 update, the board voted in favor of a 5-year, 3% per year increase beginning in July 2020 through 2024. The board paused the 3.0% increase in 2023 when they voted in favor instead for a flat $25 increase to the monthly electrical service charge. These increases in electrical rates ended last year. The board and community members have recently discussed a desire to adjust the Tier 3 residential rate, ordinance number 71. As the graph I can share. Okay, as this graph shows, Tier 3 residential rates are exponentially higher than the lower tiers. You can see the Tier 3 in the blue there. To put it into perspective, the percent increase from Tier 1 to Tier 2 is about 23%, while the percent increase from Tier 2 to Tier 3 is almost 300%. Commercial rates are the same regardless of usage. That's the orange. So in comparison, I looked up PG&E rates, and they can vary from a low of 30 cents per kilowatt hour to a high of 72 cents, depending on the time of year, time of day, and the selected rate plan. I included their paperwork in the packet. In 2019, the board consulted an outside agency, IG Services, to assist with rate adjustment decisions. IG Services conducted a rate study, which presented the board with 8 different electric rate alternatives. I've included those in this packet too. The final recommendation by IG Services was to lower the Tier 3 residential rate from $1.26 to 52 cents per kilowatt hour, while also lowering the consumption level from 2,000 kilowatt to 1,250, which was their alternative 5. Simultaneously, IG Services recommended altering the consumption levels for Tiers 1 and 2, so that Tier 1 would max at 750 instead of the current 1,000, and that Tier 2 would range from 751 to 1,250. So at that time, the board opted instead to maintain the current tiered rate consumption level structure and lower Tier 3 from $1.26 per kilowatt hour to $1.09. However, with the yearly 3.0% rate increases, Tier 3 is now where it started, pre-rate adjustment at $1.26 per kilowatt hour again. So I also have another chart here, and you can see this is what has been going on with the Tier 3 revenue since 2021. Obviously, there's a lot of factors in how someone gets into Tier 3 and what's been going on in the economy. But you can see the revenue has dropped considerably, and it's trending further down. So staff, because of this, staff recommend lowering the Tier 3 residential electric rate substantially. The current rate is too cost prohibitive. Staff recommend changing the Tier 3 residential rate to the one proposed in Alternative 5 by IG Services. Staff do not recommend changing the consumption level structure, as also proposed in that alternative. While doing so would increase revenue, it is the staff's opinion that it would defeat the purpose of trying to generate additional consumption and thus revenue. Altering the consumption level structure will increase bills dramatically for many customers, thereby discouraging consumption and further reducing revenue. So I made this chart too, and there's a lot going on here. This chart shows that what has occurred with the tier 3 revenue over the last 3 years, and what would have occurred if we'd gone with that alternative. Obviously, we would not have made as much revenue with the alternative, but you can see it just decreases over time. So this shows that that the total revenue generated during this 3-year period was 167,545, or roughly 56,000 per year. If we'd gone with that alternative, it would have been 80,363, roughly 27,000 per year, about half as much. The unknown is if the district had gone with the lower rate, would there have been more consumption and thus more revenue? Another important consideration for this discussion is the actual number of customers affected. The district has a total of about 650 residential accounts. The data for the past 3 years shows an average of only 7 per month who exceeded the tier 3 threshold, ranging from a low of 3 to a high of 11. And that's in the packet, we can see. It's only about 0.5 to 2% of all residential customers. So in conclusion, it's clear from the data that lowering the 3rd tier residential electric rate would generate less revenue at current usage rates. What's also clear is that it would only affect very few customers and cause less revenue loss each year. What remains to be seen is if lowering the rate would increase consumption and thereby increase revenue. I think moving forward, it's important to consider this change. The data shows that the existing rate structure is failing. The future could involve a substantial increase in electric consumption by, for instance, electric vehicle charging. And that could entail more residential customers reaching that 3rd tier threshold. So financial impact, yes. Potential loss in revenue from existing tier 3 residential electric customers at a lower rate, or potential increase in revenue from a possible increase in total tier 3 residential customers. So I'll leave that to you to discuss.
Okay. I think the tier 3 is way too high, especially with moving forward. I mean, like you were talking about electric cars, you're punishing people to charge their energy efficient, vehicles. So I think we really need to take a long look at this because that's the wave of the future. So that's kind of where I'm at on it. But who would like to chime in first?
I was just curious, what was the dollar amount on the that the staff recommended for the
I recommended, so look, it's kind of hard to see in the packet.
Oh, okay, I missed it.
Look,
It's 52 cents? Oh.
Right now, tier 3 would be at 0.6028.
Oh, I guess I was just wondering for the kilowatt. So 52 cents. So like dropping the 3rd tier from. I mean, I think that's kind of fair. That's what they do. And I think that's like around like what they do for PG&E in town. I know at the charging stations up in Fortuna, I think they charge you 51 cents. So I don't know. To me, I mean, obviously, like, yeah, RID needs to like cover its cost and make a little money, but like, I don't know. That sounds pretty fair to me. We also don't want to alienate people and the charging of the cars, and then like with the options of solar power, we really do kind of have to sweeten the deal. And then I also do think like maybe people would, I mean, I would plug in my car here if it was that, after having done my experiment a few months ago. Wasn't worth it. But even for like Christmas lights and stuff, I know a lot of people like dance right on that line, and I have a feeling that might be why it's not so festive here during that time too. I mean, really, it's like a lot of work to put up the lights, and then you're paying for them too. So I think like 52 cents, I think that's super fair.
Well, 60. It would have been 52 cents in 2019 with the yearly rate increases now. 0.6028.
Oh, okay. Oh, so you're 62 cents. Okay. I mean, yeah. Yeah. Okay. That sounds okay. I feel like we should kind of try and like model town just because they're our closest. That's just my opinion, though. I'm always for lowering. So
I've got a question because it really comes back with Linda that our bottom number one tier's too low. So I think that we need to raise the number one tier. I believe I would like to hear from Linda, to be honest with you, when we can. I guess we could, I'm asking her to say what the rates that are in Lake County, because I think we need to bring the bottom tier up. I agree with lowering the top tier. So
But we haven't heard from the board yet.
I know, so might have to wait a minute, Linda. Okay, go ahead, I'm done with that one.
Yeah, I'm in favor of lowering that top tier for some of the same reasons as far as electric cars and whatnot. Although I do believe we could also look at avenues of rebates for people who can prove that that's what they're using it for. However, with that said, I'd be okay. I think in the past when we chose to stay up at that higher rate, it was because with the rate study that was done, they recommended raising the lower tiers for people, and that at the time didn't seem fair because those people are being conscientious on their energy use. And he was going to be raising their bills by a couple $100s a month. And so on the backs of that of the lower usage people, they were going to be paying for the top tier. And a lot of that top tier use is done in residential zones, not in its commercial use. So now that doesn't seem to be as much of an issue, and we don't seem to need that deterrent. And we are a utility company that needs to generate income by selling power. So I am in favor of lowering that top tier. I know that our low tier is maybe too low. And so personally, I would like to see this brought back with everything included so we can see exactly how our decisions are going to be impacting not just the top tier, the lower tier, and the mid tier.
I'm going to disagree with that. I think we should just figure something out today with the tier 3, just so that's like just so we're like actually conquering these things as they come our way, and we're not just like pushing things off. Because a 126 is, that's very expensive. That's not right.
I was curious about staff's reason for not preferring a lowering of tier 1's max to the 750 kilowatts, because that seems like a better alternative to increasing the tier 1 rate.
I started doing the math on customers that were in that tier, and some of them, it was going to be a dramatic increase in the bills, and it would affect more people. One particular case was a $200 increase in their bill, and I thought that was not going to be a popular proposal. That would hurt more customers than help.
Yeah, I assume that there was some math behind it because you have so much data driven, and so the data showed that it would affect more people than what was anticipated in a pretty significantly. So would a $200 increase, would that double their electric bill basically, or? Okay.
Anybody else? No? Let's hear from Linda.
Thank you, Linda, sorry.
Linda Franklin. I gave the statistics last month when I was here, or whatever month it was that we brought up before. I don't have my bill with me, and I don't remember exactly what it was, but I remember there was like 8 cents difference, or more than 8 cents difference between what I pay in Lake County and what I pay here. It's cheaper to live here than it is in Lake County. And that doesn't, we have the infrastructure here and everything that has to be supported. And I think we should pay fairly with what we have. And it doesn't seem like we are.
Thank you, Linda.
So, Linda, are you, one of the users there in Lake County that would use up past the 1,000 kilowatt amount?
Pardon me?
Do you use past the 1,000 kilowatt amount that we're talking about? Here or in Lake County? Either one, okay. And so you're talking about what we're referring to as tier 1. It's 6 cents cheaper here than it is in Lake County. Okay, thank you.
I think it was more than that.
No,
It seems
or
to me
8
it
cents.
was considerably more than that, but
So it's 8 cents cheaper here than it is in Lake County.
It's cheaper in Lake County.
no, it's cheaper here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess
And
that's
you know
my
what,
point, yes.
I can't verify the amount. I just remember thinking, I think it was actually like 26 cents. What are we paying here?
I think you
17?
said 26, yeah.
Yeah. So,
Staff, do you have any numbers on the costs in other
Yes,
counties?
you know, I'm having to confirm my memory, but two
I
things have
remember
happened
26.
between.
I included the residential rate plan pricing for.
Right.
And they have many different plans, but looks like 37, 40 cents, 50 cents, kind of their low.
Right, so that's what I'm saying, we need to raise the bottom tier.
And that's something we can look at down the road.
Yeah, we can do that next time.
But, there's other things we're looking at too, to increase revenue for the district. So, we shouldn't just instantly run to rate increases. We're, like I said, we're looking at different ways to increase our revenue without punishing the people that live here and buy electricity from us.
No, what I'm saying is if we're at the lower end of that, and again, this is about the 3 tier, but I wouldn't mind having this discussion next time about the 1st tier.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because that way he's gonna do the same charts and you can calculate it out. It's really about the impact. I don't wanna impact our customers.
Yeah, and I do want to remind you, we just got off a 5-year rate increase.
Right.
Yeah.
On electric rates. Just
Yeah.
last July.
Yeah.
Mr. Reed.
Yeah, I want to bring up that 30 cents per kilowatt hour is the low with PG&E and we're charging 26. I would really like to see what WAPA is. If we're buying power and selling it for cheaper than what we're buying it for, that just doesn't make sense at all. So that's the lowest tier.
No.
The WAPA numbers are in the documents that we put out to public, right?
I can look that up.
Yeah, but if we're gonna bring it back next time, we can focus on tier 1.
Yeah.
And then again, then with PG&E there, they also have their peak hours, peak time, so it jumped from 31 cents up to 62 cents, and that's for home charging EV. So, I love all this information that you have in here. It says it all. And so PG&E, 72 at the high, I would copy them. How could you complain when you can just say, here, right here, PG&E does it. This is exactly what PG&E pays for. And like we're saying is that we're all have our own infrastructure that we have to take care of. So if they're worried about hurting feelings, this says it right there, 30 cents per kilowatt hour for low and 72 for high. I would match those.
Is there anyone on staff who has any idea about our electrical costs?
I think it's like 17 cents.
Okay.
Pay WAPA.
Okay.
Don't quote me on that.
Okay.
Okay, so, but again, this is a discussion that will come when we're dealing with tier 1. This is
Right.
about tier 3
Tier
today.
3.
Okay. Do we get charged an increased amount based on how much we take out, or is it a 17 flat rate for no matter how much we use?
We have an allocation and then we have a spot market too. So if we go over our allotted every month, then it goes into the spot market, which increases even more. And I don't know exactly what that is. That's in our.
Our cost to transmit has gone up as well.
And that doesn't include PG&E. Fine.
No, that doesn't include the wheeling fee. So that went from 5,000 to 7,000 a couple of years ago. Now I think it's like 15, 16 thousand a month. So,
Do you know how often we go above that sort of allotted bank that we have?
we'd have to look through the billing.
Do you have a feel for it? Is it like, oh yeah, we go over it every month, or is it like an occasional thing?
No, I remember a few years ago we went over it a few times and it was like, why is it so much? And then that's kind of how we found out. It's like, okay, it's spot market because it's you're going over your allocation, kind of like PG&E on time of use or whatever.
Right.
You're going to get charged more for if you're using electricity during when everybody else is using it, right?
Right,
So
of course.
evenings, mornings, things like that.
Okay.
Yeah,
I think
I don't know all the details. I know a little bit about it, just from chats about and stuff like that, but yeah, I don't know 100%.
Chris, is that something that you could figure out a little bit better by working with John?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, and I think maybe coming back to that later in terms of figuring out our general pricing scheme, because we don't want to be, if we're in a situation where we're always running over this bank and it's costing us more. But I think it'd be good for us to know what our total costs are, including not just the cost to purchase it from WAPA, but also to use the PG&E infrastructure. And then, if it's that 17 cents range, then we're doing fine. But if with all of these additional costs, and if we're going over that bank every month and it's ending up costing us, 30 cents, then, that's going to be a pretty big issue, I think.
Right.
Because then we don't have
need to
anything.
encourage
Right.
Conservation.
Well, I'm also gonna add that if we, as a board, we need to start implementing solar panels and battery banks, and it's gonna start reducing our costs so that we don't even have this discussion what Wes is talking about going over that. I mean, we need solar panels over the water treatment plants instead of plywood or pallets and floating balls. I mean, I think we need to be proactive and really start considering putting more of the solar panels and solar systems and work. Personally here, we have this roof that is nothing but a substructure to do that. So hopefully that never even occurs. But again, not to get a cart before the horse, we're dealing with tier 3.
Tier 3. Jack.
So, yeah, I think this is a long time coming. I've never agreed with the tier 3 rates. They've always been too high. I hear a lot of discussion about the PG&E. It's been a long time, a couple decades since I've actually paid PG&E. I don't know if they have the capacity charges that we do, so I don't know if that's being factored in as well, because we already have that $50 or whatever it is capacity charge on top of our rates. I'm sorry?
There's a monthly.
Do they have a monthly fee? I assume they did. I just didn't know if it was in concert with ours. I'll say I know personally, like for me, I'm a decently great user. My whole house is electric. My bill is usually right about $400 a month. Goes up at the holidays. Mine goes up to like $450 or so because of my holiday lights and everything like that. But I do everything in my power to keep it under that third tier for that. That being said, I'm kind of like in that planning for a major home remodel, and kind of I'm at that fence right now of do I start converting stuff over to gas? But the big thing with that is fossil fuels are also going up and up and up, and so kind of it almost makes sense to go back to the 1970s model of putting everything electric because more production is coming solar. And so kind of that's where I'm at on that fence. I'm actually looking at, equipment right now as far as hot water heaters and that kind of stuff. I need to replace my central heat and that kind of thing. And it's like, do I continue on with this, keeping them electric, or do I switch over to fossil fuels? I know lowering that third tier would definitely more incentivize me towards staying more towards electric than going towards fossil fuels. People with electric vehicles and everything else, obviously, I can totally understand. And I know if I had an electric vehicle, I looked into it, just didn't make sense for me and what I needed. They just don't have the range that I needed. But I couldn't imagine owning an electric vehicle and then not being able to charge it up at home. Because that's the whole reason I would have bought an electric vehicle is to reduce my, fuel costs. So yeah, that being said, I don't know. I know it's not an easy subject. I've been in your seat, so I don't envy you at all. I'm kind of like, haha, I get to watch it from the outside now. But I don't envy you guys at all. It's not easy at all. I don't want to see my bills go up, but we need RID here. again, the solar solution is the best solution. If we could become a power generator rather than a power consumer, that would be phenomenal, because then we could actually start, pushing into PG&E's territory possibly at some point, which I don't think that they would put up much of fronts, because they seem to be at their limits of capacity anyways for this end of the line. So I think that tier 3 is great to come down. I think 60 cents or 60 odd cents, whatever, I think is in, capacity. Another thing to point out, we don't have the ability to hourly rate. We can't do peak rating and stuff, because we don't have the instant read. Even if we do get to where we can have electronic reading, it'll be our guys probably driving by with a truck with a sensor, to where they don't have to actually walk up to the meter and see it. It'll just automatically shoot those numbers to a receiver. But it'll probably be some time, if ever, that we're at the rate that we could, actually get time of use billing, because that's what PG&E has. So yeah, it's like they know at 5 o'clock, or whatever hour it is, they can start charging this, and this is what you're using at that exact time. We don't have that capacity yet. I don't know what it'll cost us to actually get to that. So yeah, I think it's great. Lower that third tier. On the other ones, well, I think I'd fight raising the rates, but again, like we just went through 5 years of it, with not just the use fees, but also capacity fees and everything else. So what was 5 years ago, just about $100 a month, just straight capacity fees before any uses, it's now like over 150, along with the rate fees on top of that. So yeah, I think it's great to lower that third tier, but I don't know about the other two.
We're gonna discuss that next time.
No, absolutely. No, it's always something to discuss. But yeah, no, on the third tier, I think it's a great idea to drop that down. So thank you.
Thank you, Jack.
Thank you.
All right, anybody else, anything they wanna? Well, we have another one.
I know. I have a buffer. I put a built-in buffer there.
So rest in peace, Rhonda Bodegger. I don't know how many of you remember him. I believe the third tier was invented because of the marijuana growing that was happening so much here in Shelter Cove, and also to purchase the generators that we needed for the brownouts because of the marijuana growers. The growers were supplementing what RED wasn't making with the lack of what other people were using that were trying to save money. Like, I'm hanging on by a thread, paying like $250 a month for my utilities, and I'm never home. And my friend in Santa Cruz County is paying like $1,000 a month for water, sewer, and electricity, which is totally bogus. I feel like she's being strong-armed by PG&E. So I don't want to compare what we pay to what other people are paying, because I feel like PG&E is not the most. I don't feel like they're very truthful, or honest in how they charge their people. But I just want to me, like the blue tier, the third tier is like imaginary. It doesn't even hardly exist anymore. We have very few people using it or lessen it. I just think you should get rid of it altogether. And if you did, you wouldn't be drawing in pot growers to come here and start spending more money on electricity, because there's no money in marijuana anymore. So don't worry about that.
Thank you. All right, anybody else? Public, board, anybody? All right. Tasha, you got something? No? We ready for a motion then on something? What do we want to do here?
Did you say, so we're looking at roughly 62 cents or 61 cents?
To go with that rate study recommendation, 0.6028 currently is where it would be at, yes.
Yeah, it'd be my preference to be looking at the rates all structured together rather than piecemealing it, but we're here for the third rate, so I'm open to moving forward.
Okay. I like the recommendation. Anybody want to make a motion?
I trying not to. All right. I would like to make a motion to adjust the ordinance number 71 administrative rate schedule for electric usage for tier 3. I would like to bring it down to 0.0628.
No, point 0.60.
0.6028 kilowatt hours, kWh. Anything else I should, that's.
Here.
And bring it back.
Oh, and bring back the issue. And bring the issue back for the first reading at the April board meeting. Oh, here, I could have just read that. Sorry, guys. That was painful.
Let's get a roll call.
Patty Bonham,
Aye.
Jeff Hildreth,
Aye.
Tasha Kasheen, Mike Solori,
Aye.
Kristen Sanders.
Aye.
Unanimous.
All right, Tristan, we better
All right,
see
yes.
that car being charged in your parking lot
I
now.
know, seriously.
Down to the last one.
I know,
Yeah, I'm gonna
I
leave.
know they,
Thank you.
Tristan. For the next
You might get put in this spot. You know, those who leave get elected.
I nominate Tristan.
Right, Jack?
Now I became president of Pioneer.
That's right. All right, so action item number 4, consider request for nomination to serve as independent special district representative of the Northern Network Seat B, this is Bravo, on the California Special Districts Association Board of Directors. And I'd like to first take my name out of the hat and put 2 in for Jeff.
Can we get the James?
Yeah, this comes up every couple of years.
Yeah.
I do want to, there is no obligation that we nominate one of our board members on the board, but I just have to bring it up because it is a good source of advocacy for our organization with the CSDA. But there is a financial impact. The CSDA requires that the board member attend 2 conferences per year and does not pay for those. So we, district, have to pay for that. Your conferences are usually out of the area, Sacramento, somewhere. And then also that person would have to complete all 4 modules of a special district leadership academy. So there is some cost to this nomination.
I'll have to say, my comment would be that I have to agree with Nick that if he's doing what we're saying and we have to advocate for this district, I think that it's very important that we have representation. Not that we're gonna get elected, it's one of those be careful what you ask for. But I think it's very important, and if anything, I think that we know what's gonna happen before it happens. We can be an advocate, we can really be an advocate for not just our ID, but the firefighter part of it. I think that this is where we need as a board to step up.
You've already volunteered for the GSRMA board, and I guess that election is next month, is it?
Yeah, I believe they're announcing at their May 14th meeting, they'll announce the winner of the election.
Well, unless Wes doesn't do it or Tesha.
Yeah, traveling isn't really an option for me. This does require traveling.
It's gonna be up to Wes.
Yeah.
I would love Wes.
It could be the general manager too.
Yeah, or it can be the chief.
But Chris and I talked about that, and I thought it was, apropos. But I'd hate to throw so much more down your plate, so I have no issues with you doing it, but I'd hate to throw you under the bus and back up and do it again.
I would say Chris has his plate full, personally.
Agree.
So comment from Wes, I know it's coming.
Oh, no, I don't have any comment. I'd be willing to do that, though.
Nice.
Wow.
Wow.
Let's get a motion quick. Huh? Oh, public comment. Public comment? No? Public comment. Jessica, comment.
I mean, I would just like to give a, I didn't actually read this item, I apologize if I'm repeating what's in here, but we did have a little meeting with the SDA the other day, and they reiterated to us that this position tends to be more political. So I just wanted to draw that as well.
I like it.
Can I still wear my bow tie?
No.
Mandatory.
I'll make a motion that we nominate Wes Baham to serve as an independent special representative, if so elected, to the Northern Network Seat B of California Special District Association Board of Directors.
I'll second that.
Roll call.
Mike Solari.
Aye.
Wes Baumheim.
Aye.
Jeff Eldred.
Aye.
Kristen Sanders.
Absent.
And Joshua Bashir.
Motion carries.
See, I did. I wanted
One
you
more
to
item
do
of
it. I got
business.
you. You're in it, Rick.
Any unfinished business?
Happy spring, everybody.
Happy spring.
Yeah, I remember talking before about it, because I
Meeting adjourned, 12:40 hour.